We've now reached the final stage in our Bringing Evangelion to America journey, the era of redubs. On November 27th, 2018, Netflix announced that the original Neon Genesis Evangelion TV series and movies would be coming to the service. They would begin streaming on June 21st, 2019, not with the original dubs by ADV and manga, but with a completely new dub with a completely new voice cast and an adaptation heavily supervised by Studio Khara.
Wow, that all happened so quickly. It was towards the end of 2018. There was an announcement that came out that Netflix was going to release the TV series. And immediately that was like, oh, that's so exciting. You know, the TV series is going to be on Netflix. And so naturally, we all just assumed it was going to be the version that we did because, I mean, it already exists. I mean, it's, with all due modesty, it's pretty popular. People like it. And I thought, okay, well, that's really good.
I'm going to try to be tactful here. I was notified through the grapevine from an anonymous source, and that they were auditioning for this thing. I was like, that's Evangelion.
They were doing auditions for the actors, and some other voice actors contacted me and Spike and said, did you know that they're doing this? And we went, what?
And we hadn't gotten any phone calls, so we thought that was odd.
And then almost immediately, I mean, it was within just like 1 or 2 days, I got Spike called me or texted me and said that they were redoing it, that they were going to redo the series. And he says, and I found out that they're having auditions. And I was just absolutely flabbergasted.
I just remember getting a call from Tiffany, and Tiff kind of giving me the down low.
I can't tell you that because the way I learned it was the way I wasn't supposed to learn about it. So I knew about it almost immediately once they started approaching actors.
I was a bit more active, or trying to be more active, in social media at that time, and I saw it come up on some Twitter feed somewhere, and I saw that that was how I came to find out that they were doing it, and that the original voice actors were trying to say, use us instead of getting new people in it. I seem to remember making a tweet that retweet the idea, yes, please use the original actors. And I have no idea if I got any eye rolls or anything else about that.
Spike Spencer started posting about it and saying, please contact Netflix and tell them to not do this with a new cast. Tell them they need the old cast. So he and Tiffany and a couple others, I think, really picked up the banner and tried to champion, please don't use a new cast. We bring back the old cast. You know, the fans love us, and you're making a huge mistake.
I found out when I saw it coming to Netflix. I saw something that said coming to Netflix. I got excited, I'm not gonna lie, even though I knew the business side of this stuff, that was they were probably going to redub it.
Why did they redub them?
I didn't see why. I was nervous about it because I didn't know whether there was going to be anybody at Netflix that it was going to be able to treat the material well. I don't know that there wasn't, but at the same time, does it really need it? I mean, why now, and why are you doing it?
I liked what we did in the original.
The series is so important and so cool, and so it's such a standard for the anime world back in the day, right? Like, I think that it impacted so many people that I feel like if there's anything that they would want to be redubbed, it's just because everybody wants a piece of it. Does that make sense? So, like, I don't know if the need is there, but I think the want overrode the need, and for that, I take it as a compliment that we were able to make that kind of impact on other people and do the show justice. If they don't think we did it justice and they wanted to redub it, I don't know that maybe it was targeted like, oh, they suck. I don't know. I wasn't involved in any of that. I don't take things personally like that.
You know, and they redid every single version of Evangelion except the Japanese. Their Japanese version was untouched, but every version that went on Netflix was completely redone.
So I found who the director was. So I knew her. And I said, hey, cool. I just want to let you know, I'm Shinji. I've been Shinji for 25 years. I want to make sure that I'm in the running for this, or what's happening with this. I didn't know. So I met with her and we chatted and said, okay, cool. Then I was going to go in and read.
Amanda had contacted the casting agent and the director and said, were we going to be able to read for these? And then I think because of the uncomfortableness, because the fans were like, you're not even going to let them read? And they just wanted to go a different direction on that.
And so we raised a big stink online. So they're like, okay, fine, you can come in and audition.
And so things just escalated very, very, very quickly from there with, us going in and auditioning. And it was really crazy. That was such a surreal experience.
I actually put out a little video on Facebook. I think it was right as I was about to go in to read, and I got a little choked up, because I was like, "This is my guy, and I'm gonna go read to be him." What? So it was a little bittersweet.
And so I went in and I said, I'm sort of interested why they're redoing like all of it. And she's like, well, anime in the 90s was anime in the 90s, and there's some things that they want to improve on. And I'm like, really? Well, I did the ones in the 90s. I would love to know what needed to be improved.
Wow. Everything about it was surreal and crazy. As I mentioned, I never auditioned to be Asuka the first time. So going in to do an audition for a character that I'd been playing for well over 20 years, just like bizarro time. And when I was in, they had like a little break room area in that studio, and a girl in there, one of the other actors who was auditioning, I don't remember her name, and I wouldn't say it if I did remember, but she got really excited about seeing me, and she goes, oh, I really hope you get it. And then she said, I'm sorry, but do you mind if I get a selfie with you? So she totally knew who I was. And even though she was in there auditioning, she probably had just read for Asuka for all I know. It was not Stephanie. It wasn't the actor who ended up replacing me. But anyway, yeah, she wanted to do a selfie with me, and that was, just crazy. And then I remember going into the booth and saying, my name is Tiffany Grant, and I'm auditioning for Asuka Langley Soryu. Just saying those words, it felt crazy. Crazy. Like I'm auditioning to be myself. I know that sounds ridiculous and melodramatic, but that's really how I felt.
It was like going in and doing scenes that I'd done 20 years ago, redoing them. And some of them saying like, you know what, the dub is off, or the flip flaps are off there. And they're like, it's okay, this is the script we want to use.
And then the dialogue that I was reading, it was so stupid. And I was saying third children. And the director, Carrie Karanen, was telling me, oh yeah, this is not the final script. This is, we're just using this for that. It was totally the final script. It absolutely was. And it was awful. It was so bad. It was so bad. I was like, oh, you don't really want me to call Shinji the third children, do you? Oh, yes, we do, because that is some English that we can all speak here.
It was so humiliating and so demoralizing and so awful. Like they really, it actually really just shows like there is no loyalty in the voiceover industry. None whatsoever. Never expect the companies to have your back because they won't.
I was asked to audition for it. And after talking to everyone, we just decided, not really sure how valuable it would be for me to audition for myself, right? Because I wouldn't come in and try to make Misato something she already wasn't. So after speaking to the sweet girl that directed it, and I spoke to her and just said, I think I politely declined and said, hey, if you guys want to use us, let me know. But I spoke with her about it. But I don't know if she wanted us to go out to LA. I can't remember. And that wasn't possible for me.
I will tell you one thing that a lot of people don't know. I also read for the part of Gendo. And I told them, I said, look, you may want to go a different way with Shinji. Cool. That's your prerogative. It is your thing. But I tell you what, you put me in as Gendo, and the Evangelion world's going to blow their top. It's going to be amazing. So it was Gendo Ikari, very deep, very, you little crap hole, you know, get in the robot, you little, you know, whatever. So anyway, it was fun.
Maybe I did read for Masato, or maybe I read for Ritsuko. I don't remember which one, but I thought that would have been cool to have like the old children be the new senior members of the new dub, but they just wanted nothing to do with us.
They actually, when I was there, they asked me if I wanted to audition, and I seriously considered it. If I wanted, did I want to audition? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't want to, you know, as much as maybe it would be fun to be Ritsuko or it would be fun to be Misato. I was like, no, Allison Keith is Misato. I don't need to audition for that. The one thing I said to her is like, well, if I'm not going to be Asuka, maybe, you know, those few lines that Yoko has, Asuka's mom, I said, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do, you know, the lines of Asuka's mom. But of course, they never asked me to do that or anything.
You know what? I guarantee you they got asked to audition, or they were able to audition just to shut them up, in my opinion. I think that was because I mean, what are you going to say? You don't really sound like Shinji. You are Shinji. I mean, he is Shinji. What do you mean he doesn't sound like Shinji? That was just, okay, fine, we'll audition you. Yeah, we don't want to use you. Sorry, but we let you audition, so go away. That was a pure kind of just shut them up publicity stunt, in my opinion.
Yeah, they totally I think they threw ours away. Like, they weren't even going to audition us until we heard and made stink. And then they brought us in, but I bet they just threw it away.
They were never considering us anyway.
I honestly don't think we were in the running at all to be cast. They'd made their minds up ahead of time. We're going fresh, you know.
I didn't find out till later. Did Allison tell you her story behind all of that? She didn't make it, and the girl that was doing the auditioning, the casting director, is the one who took her role. So it's kind of like, why are you even doing auditions if you're just going to take it yourself? You know what I mean? It's just kind of silly, but whatever.
I don't think they meant for us to audition, if I'm honest, if that's real. It wasn't made very easy for us to even have a chance at it. Let's just say that. It really wanted us to.
You're not really being considered, but they want to be able to say to the fans, oh, well, we had them audition, but looking at how the casting actually went, it was like, no, they never really were intending to cast any of those people again.
What you learn is it's show business. It just is show business. And Netflix, their priority was not to get the original actors. They wanted to create their own new thing.
I mean, I should have saved my frequent flyer miles and the money that I spent flying myself out to LA to audition for that.
I mean, Tiffany flew all the way across the country to audition for this thing. So we all were in on it. We were all like, yeah, we'll go. But it was only because I found out. They were not going to let us know. Now, this is their prerogative. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. I don't talk bad about people. I will call things out as they are. They were not going to call us in. They were not going to let us know at all. They have stated, oh, yes, we were going to let them know. That is a lie. Period. Plain and simple. I don't care who anybody says. I have no animosity towards anybody, but I will call out BS when there is BS. That was a lie. They were not going to let us know at all. And they said, oh, yeah, it's theirs to lose. I'm like, huh. If I hadn't found out about it, nobody would have known. They would have gone and done it, and we would have found out, months later. It's like, what just happened? We would have had no idea.
I think also that they were really unaware of how entrenched those voices had become with the fans. Most of those voices had been there since the beginning, or almost since the beginning, and people were like, yeah, we're used to these voices. This is what the character sounds like.
I'm curious why they didn't ask some of the former actors to do it. I can understand they're wanting to re-record it and redub it so they could call it their own. But, if you got actors who are doing a good job, use them.
I didn't read Fioba on that because I figured if Amanda doesn't get cast as Ray, they're not going to care about me as Aoba.
And they certainly never asked me.
I remember thinking, well, they didn't ask me. Huh. That was it.
If we all had been approached, I would have said, yeah, talk to me. I can do this because I wasn't exactly ready to fly someplace, but any good studio could do the recording. That's not a problem. So there's plenty of them here in town, I'm sure, or at least a few. And so I could probably get that for them. But no, there was no contact, no interest.
I would have been sad not to get to do it, but I wouldn't have been crushed. You know, it wasn't something that had been part of my life for a while, but I'm sure they got more famous people.
At the time, it was like an existential crisis for me, and I'm not overstating this. Actually, it was a very traumatic time for me. It was very upsetting. Yeah, it was a really dark place for me. It was not good. That was really, really hard to deal with at the time. And you know, it sounds crazy to say this now in light of everything that's happened, but I can remember at the time thinking like, oh my gosh, you know, this Netflix version will come out and this will be the version that everybody sees and everybody will just prefer that version and they will like that and they will just forget about all of us like original cast members and they'll just have all of the new people will be at conventions and they won't even want us anymore. I mean, really, like all of this stuff, I really imagined that all of these things were going to happen. None of that really happened, but I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I just thought, oh my gosh, you know, we're going to be forgotten about and no one's going to want to know anything about us anymore. We're going to be yesterday's news. And that is not what happened, but yeah, it was literally an existential crisis for me because I just thought, wow, you know, Asuka is so much a part of my identity, and who am I if I'm not Asuka? It was pretty crazy.
It was very upsetting. Ray is such a huge part of me. Evangelion is such a huge part of me, and we put so much into that original series, just like going over line by line, making sure we had everything we thought right. And it hurt a lot. It really destroyed me.
It hurt a little bit, I have to be honest.
And Allison was gutted. I mean, absolutely gutted. She was not able to audition. And I remember us being on the phone sobbing with each other about all of this happening. And she said you know, it didn't even hit her until that time, like how important Misato was to her. And she couldn't believe that it was happening after, you know, 20 plus years of being these characters.
And we had to sign NDAs for 2 years. We couldn't say anything about that.
I got threatening messages from people with Netflix and with the production company because they said I was flapping my gums about it just a little bit too much.
Yeah, they came after us. And they got real snotty about it.
And I maybe suggested that they should just sue me. But they didn't. So
and they also told Tiffany she was violating, and she wrote back this beautiful letter going, I need you to explain to me exactly why this is considered violating an NDA. It was beautiful. It's like, oh, God, I love Tiffany.
I've had Netflix a while. So I was skimming through and I saw the anime, genre, and I clicked on it, and I just did a search for Eva, and it came up, and that's when I found out there were more recent shows.
Somebody told me, oh, you know, it's on Netflix, and I was like, oh wow, and then we went and my husband and I started it, and we were like, these don't sound like the same voices. I was like, oh, that's right. I think somebody mentioned that they redubbed it.
You know, it's interesting because my kids are, when I shared with them that I was a former anime actor and told them about my involvement in Eva, they just were over the moon about that. They were just so excited. They couldn't believe it. They were telling all their friends and all that kind of stuff. It was really funny. But I remembered seeing it on Netflix, and I'm like, yeah, let me show you when I did this. And I started to listen to it and watch. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not me. What is this? And that's when I figured out they had redubbed all of it.
I was looking online and I saw it was out. I was like, oh. And then I heard different people. I was like, oh.
That was very confusing for me because I'm going, wait a minute, it's the same exact show and and there's more than one dub for this?
I found out when it hit Netflix. I am so out of the loop. And I actually thought for a second that it might be the one that we did because I'm just like not paying attention. And then it started up and I was like, oh, I don't recognize this cast or whatever. And then I was a little perplexed because I was like, why don't they just put the cool original version on?
My son was like, hey, your movie's on. And I'm like, what movie? And he's like, oh, the Eva Megillion. I was all right, cool. And he was watching it. He was like, wait, that's not you. And I'm like, yeah. I don't think that's me. He was like, yeah, so.
They refer to the Netflix version as the official dub. And yes, that seriously chaps my ass because it directly implies that our version was somehow not official. Somehow indicate that our version is not an official version is just a fallacy because it absolutely is an official dub. It was approved. It was in every way official. So yeah, to call ours the classic dub, I guess classic is fine. But then to say that the other one is official, I feel like it's directly implying that our version is not official. So, I think another adjective would have been better used, like the new dub, or revised version, or all new, or whatever they want to call it. But yeah, classic and official, I mean, F you,
Well, I mean, they got to name it something, right? I don't know how it's official. What does that mean?
It's, they did it. They put all their money into it. They can call it anything they want. And consequently, it's the official according to whom?
Whatever they need to do to make money, good on them.
I don't. It's fine. I'm glad that we weren't called the stupid dub, but it's.
I guess if they own it and want to call it whatever they want to, that's fine.
I mean, I guess it seems kind of like a slight to a degree. But I understand from hey, I'm a marketer, so I understand when you're trying to differentiate your product. But to say that that's the official, version and this one's the classic, what are you talking about, like, New Coke and Classic Coke? Hey, I'll take Classic Coke any day over the new stuff, right? So
the official is the original, pure and simple. This was just a thing. So it was a marketing ploy. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot of respect for that comment.
Well, that's just silly. Everybody would want to be classic. I mean, a classic stays forever. Official, please.
And really, the truth is, and I'm not sure if I already said this, but the truth is, if they had hired us, everybody was so upset. Oh, they didn't hire the original cast for the Netflix dub. They would have made us say that awful, awful, awful dialogue. That would have been really hard. It would have been pretty freaking excruciating. It really would. I mean, and I'll be totally honest with you. I am not a wealthy person, but I would absolutely rather Netflix would have just used our original dub, our official classic dub, 100 times. I would have rather them used that than paid us to go back in and redo it. Even if, maybe if we were redoing it and using like the exact same script and just like newer technology or something, but to record it with that POS script that they used, no. I don't need the money that bad. No, I would not be paid to do that script.
I actually haven't seen what Netflix did with End of Evangelion. I didn't have the heart to. I didn't want to see. I worked on that movie so hard. I ended up in the hospital for a week. And I just didn't want to see what somebody else did in their spare time or whatever.
I was basically warned against it. So if you respect your own work, don't even bother. So I said, okay. So I haven't seen it. I can't make any judgment about it other than, as I say, I was warned not to look at it.
I don't know how long it'll be before I sit and try to attach myself to it, because why would I? I don't know anybody in it. I've already watched the show. It's yeah.
I've seen some clips from it. I actually don't have Netflix. I've never had Netflix, so no, I've never watched it. I don't think I would. I mean, no offense to anybody who worked on it. I don't have a reason to really watch it.
I watched like half an episode and I was like, okay, I just wanted to test the quality, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's
real hard for me to watch Shinji and not have it be Spike Spencer, because it's just like, to me, that's the guy's voice, because that's what I was listening to all that time recording. Kurt Stoll is Kensuke. Yeah, he had the coolest voice for that character, and I mean, not hearing his voice come out of that, because he was just so so fun to listen to in that part, that it was hard to hear anybody else do that part.
I've watched parts of it. Honestly, it was hard to watch for me. I watched enough to go, this is what they did with it. Not even sure I could say I like it. I don't hate it. It's weird. It's weird to watch, mainly because of Ray. The Riley who did the voice is so good. But my wife's voice that come out of that character for 30 some odd years, and it's strange.
But I guess that's true if you listen to whatever version as your first listen, then something later is going to sound different because you're used to something else.
I haven't seen the whole series. I watched a few of them with Amanda, and we drank and watched and critiqued, and it was a lot of fun.
Very snarky, very bitter.
Oh, it's so much fun. I mean, just hanging out, and I'm drinking wine, and we're just having a good time, and just going, oh, wait a minute, this is different. Hold on, stop it. And then we would talk to people. It was a live, call-in thing. And so we're talking to people. Oh, so here's what we did we were in the session. Oh man, remember that? Oh yeah. It was a fun little thing that we did for a little while.
And I hadn't met the kids yet who did the new dub, so I think we only did a couple episodes. It just the thing is, like Spike said, like, I helped cast the original. So to hear someone else's voice do Shinji, it's like, no, that's not my Shinji. I know what my Shinji sounds like. You know what I mean?
And the thing is, you have to, I've always said this to people about any kind of acting, voice acting, anime, whatever, anything. At the end of the day, as an actor, there's a client who's the director, the producer, whoever, and they are ultimate arbiters. So you either do what they want, or they'll hire somebody who will. I mean, that's why I have nothing against the actors who worked on the Netflix dub. I mean, not even remotely. They're actors. They were offered a job. They did a job. I mean, I'm sure I've worked on some really terrible projects over the years. I mean, I know I have, but hey, it was a job and I took the job. So I don't blame them for doing it.
I have not one thing to say bad about the cast, because I thought they all did a great job. It just wasn't our voices. So the fans were a little like, what's going on here?
But, like, it's not the actor's fault. Like, I met Ryan. I love Ryan. She's adorable. She's awesome. And I'm guessing she did a great job as Ray. I don't know. I haven't watched their dub. But I've met Ryan. I've met Casey. I've never met Stephanie. But, yeah, we're all friends. There's, like, no hard feelings between us. It's I'm not like, you stole my life. No.
We're friends with a lot of them. Amanda and Riley are close. And once you got over the initial, like, nobody's our enemy. No actor is our enemy. No producer, no director is our enemy. You're just like, oh, that's what happens with life.
No hard feelings. I'm glad that at least more people can see the show and how great it is, even if it's not dubbed by me and my friends.
Interesting, because I have some friends who are in that cast. So I was, again, very excited that new, fresh voices were participating in this project.
And I have no animosity towards anybody that worked on it. I think they did a good job. There are other people who disagree with that. I'm like, cool. So they did what they did.
Oh, and then I think Spike put something out on Twitter or something like that, didn't he? I think he congratulated. He did something real nice, if I remember. He congratulated the new Shinji actor.
I actually sent everybody out that I could find a little message to say, "Hey, man, welcome to the Evangelion family. You know, cool. There's plenty of room for us all."
And it's all good. Like behind the scenes, we're all just happy to be working, and it doesn't, like there's no drama, there's no tension. It's we're all. I will speak for myself when I say I am, again, so honored to be a part of the Evangelion multiverse, and I look forward to meeting more people who are a part of the Evangelion universe.
Ray Chase, who I know, is a great guy and a really very super talented actor. He did the role of Gendo, and no ill will or hard feelings towards him. He's an actor just like I am, and he was asked to do a job and he did it, and I would have done the same thing.
I just don't get butt hurt. I just don't. You know what I mean? Like, my butt's too big to be hurt. Like, I'm old. You know what I mean? I'm not old. I keep saying I'm old, but I mean, I think I continue to take it as a compliment. I don't really know how else to say it. Like, if you've done something that impacted so many people that someone else wants to do it too, then so be it. But the OGs are the OGs at the end of the day. What? I mean, that's all you know what I mean? That's what I say. That's what I say.
Don't you have any faith in the work your father's doing?
So I actually went to film school. I have a degree in cinema television from University of Southern California, USC's film school. And we actually have references to Evangelion in our textbooks. So I saw the name written. I didn't know how to pronounce it, but I had seen it sort of referenced and images of it, and it, described a little bit throughout my college education, but I didn't think it would ever be a part of my life necessarily at that point. I was just like, oh, I don't know. What is this thing? For anime, you can have auditions go one of two ways. You can have them send you, and you don't get to choose. I say you can have, but you don't have any choice in how it goes down. Either they're going to send you some clips of the show in Japanese, and they also send you the text that they want you to read, that's the same scene, like the lines. So you have the lines and you can match it up, and you watch how the Japanese actor did it, and then you look at your line, and you kind of think about how to interpret that. Or you can just have the script, just the sides by themselves. And that's what happened with Evangelion. I did not have any footage of Eva when I did the audition. I had a callback in which I did. When we did the callback, we were in studio, and then I saw the footage, and I saw her, and I heard her. I heard Megumi Hayashibara for the first time. So the original audition came as an NDA code word project, and I did not get any reference for what she sounded like in Japanese. But yeah, when I did the original audition, it was based on just a small character description and, my best guess for whatever she might sound like, But then when I did the callback, I go into the booth and they do it more like you actually work in anime, which is you get to preview the scene in Japanese before you do it. So I auditioned for Shinji, and I think I might have auditioned for Asuka as well. I don't remember, but I know I auditioned for Shinji because I was called back for Shinji. And then I did my callback for Shinji. I play a lot of boys. That's one of the things I'm known for. And I did my callback for Shinji, and then the director of the dub, Carrie Karanen, came in and was like, I want to have you audition for this other character. And I recognized it because I had originally auditioned for that character too, which was Ray. It was code word, code named. It didn't say Ray, but I recognized the script, and I was like, oh yeah. And then once I saw the footage, because they, like I said, at the callback is when I first saw the footage, then I was like, oh yeah, I can do something that I think would be representative of that performance. So I don't know what my original audition for Ray was, but it was not what it needed to be. Like, it wasn't that, because I wasn't called back for that, So yeah, so once I did my read for Shinji, And she was like, well, let's have you read for this other character. I was kind of like, ooh, okay, I probably didn't book the boy then. I didn't know it was Shinji at the time. I didn't even, when I saw this footage in the callback, I still did not realize this was Evangelion. Because I hadn't seen the show. Someone just starts showing you a show and you know you're auditioning for it. You wouldn't say like, oh, I know what this is. It's like, okay. It wasn't till after I left the room that I looked it up and I kind of put two and two together. But yeah, so I think, okay, well, I guess I didn't book the guy. Hope I can do a good read for this girl, because looks like I wasn't quite what they were hoping for the dude. So, and then I took my best shot at Ray, and I guess that was close. That was what they were looking for. They sent me kind of like a private link to watch all of the episodes in Japanese before I started, because they thought, this one's a pretty heavy one. You're going to need to wrap your head around this one before we go in. They wanted us to like have a more full kind of concept of what this is before starting. And so, but it wasn't available online. Like, it wasn't like you could tell someone, oh yeah, you should watch it before we start. It's on Hulu. Like, we couldn't do that, and the DVDs are hard to find. And so they actually, like, in a private, privately accessible like way, they gave me access to watch the show. I know that by the time I got through, like, to where things start getting really heavy, I knew, like, wow, this is really something special. Like, this is really different and innovative and beautifully written and sculpted and animated. And I was kind of blown away by how good it was. But I think at first, like, when you first just play it, you really don't know where it's going. And I was, yeah, I think I just kind of thought, I wonder what this is going to be about. Like, is this going to be a mech anime? Not sure. And then once I got into it more, I was like, wow, okay, so this is why this show is so important. This is why this show is so historical.
The timeline of events for the operation beginning tomorrow at 0000 hours is as follows.
I think we found it pretty early. Like, I don't remember, like, struggling with it or, like, trying a lot of different things or anything like that. So I think, one of the hardest things about that character in general is that she's so nuanced. Like, it has to be so subtle. Her changes have to be so minute, and you have to be working with a very fine-tooth instrument to be able to get the changes that subtly. And I remember Carrie Karen, the dub director, described it to me as, like, everybody has a palette, right, of their emotions, and you're here, and you're here, and you're here, like a painter in a palette. And Ray has all those, but it's here instead of here. It's here. She's over here, and she's over here, and then she's over here, and we're mixing in a little bit of this. And it's all so much more kind of, it's just all tucked in more. It's all there. She can feel all the other things that we can. It's just everything's a little bit closer. All those little colors are a little bit closer to each other, and we're sprinkling in a little bit of that. It's a very nuanced and kind of the subtlety involved in making that character come to life in front of your eyes as she's literally becoming more human. That's the key to that character.
I haven't given too much thought to my future. Besides, there's a third option I think you might be forgetting.
I didn't know I was going to do Yui. I don't think that ever came up in any of the auditions or the callbacks. Probably not until the episodes where we see Yui. But I can understand why thematically that's a really appropriate and necessary choice. But I don't think I really, like, grasped that was, that's the same voice actress in Japanese, and that will probably be me. Like, I don't think any of that crossed my mind at the time. So I think I was probably a little surprised, but also happy that I got to play Yui, because that's cool. I like stretching myself vocally and, like, playing moms down here. You get to kind of do that sort of mom thing, and that's, I think, like, that's not really my normal vibe. That's not what people think of me as when I'm being cast. So it's good I like to be able to explore my lower register and do those kinds of roles. So yeah, it was fun, but I don't think I knew ahead of time. In Japanese, she plays Pen Pen as well, and I did not play Pen Pen. And that's a fun character, which I would have liked to play, but I think that thematically that is not as important, that the actor that plays Pen Pen be Rei, as versus like obviously Yui thematically needs to probably be the same actor, if at all possible, as Rei, because that's like the point, you know what I mean? Versus Pen Pen is just like, that's a fun one-off thing, but we didn't have time. Like, we were working on, our priorities were obviously Rei, getting Rei as good as she could be, and getting Yui, you know, sounding great, and then yeah, we would not have had time. That also we did not have time to do, and it's like kind of a sound design thing with with all the units, I guess, in terms of the roaring and stuff. So I did a few takes of roaring in case they wanted to use it, but I'm not sure what made the cut and what didn't. We didn't spend a lot of time on it because they just didn't want to blow out my voice, because that's like, you know, that the priority was getting through all of Rei's content, and making that great and sound great, and it wouldn't really service any of us if we blew out my voice doing screams and then had to like figure out, you know, when do we bring her back to do Rei. So we didn't really focus on that. I think I did a couple of roars just so that they had him in case they wanted to mix him in, so that it could be me if it was necessary that it's me, but I don't think they ended up, I don't know, because that's like a sound design thing, so I'm not really sure. And I remember the booth that we worked in, it doesn't exist anymore. It was, the building was remodeled and repurposed, but we were in this booth that was like, and I recorded the whole show in this one booth, and it was shaped like where they put you into the Evangelion, like the little kind of where you would go into if you were piloting an Eva. It was like the plug, and it was shaped like that kind of. It was really small and kind of like a weird sort of angle-y thing, like that, like a triangle of a booth, kind of weird little thing. And that always felt like very appropriate because she would have done a lot of her piloting and obviously, you know, her work in a little constrained sort of area like that. And so I remember that a lot, being like, it was the strangest shape of booth that I've ever worked in, probably before or since.
I can't do that because if I'm gone, then the AT field will disappear.
I would say, like, emotionally, I felt very raw after I was done. Like, I kind of needed to clear my head and, like, shake it off a little bit. More than usual after sessions. But yeah, but I wouldn't say that it was like, oh, I can't do it. Like, I can't cry. Trust me. I can cry. I can, the trick with crying is not going too far. Like, you want to hold back. Nobody wants to hear somebody blubbering. What they actually want to hear is someone trying not to cry. That's far more powerful. I know my favorite moment is, well, I like them. I have a few favorite moments, but I love the monologue.
Mountains. Heavy mountains. Something that changes over time.
I like the part where she says, the sun, there is only one. I made a really conscious effort to sprinkle in a little longing on that line specifically because I thought that Rei would be imagining Shinji.
The sun. There is only one.
And I love the scene where she's talking to, I get an angel sort of disguised as Rei, and they're speaking. So it's Rei talking to Rei, and they're kind of in that red primordial soup, you know, and they're facing each other, and one's a little bit higher and one's kind of lower. I love that scene.
Don't you want to become one with me? No, I am me. I am not you.
I can't begin to tell you all the ways that it affected my life and continues to affect my life. I will say, like, I do remember really viscerally when I rapped and I was like in my car. Yeah, I'll share a few things. When I was in my car, it was raining. It was raining that day. It doesn't even rain in LA that often, but I got in my car and I had just finished, and I just started crying. Like, I just broke down and just kind of started crying, and I was like, waiting to leave, but I was like I want to wait out this rain. So I was kind of sitting there in my car, and I just like started crying. And it was really a weird moment because it's also raining outside, and when you have that like you're hearing like all these drops all around you, and then like I'm crying, and I look down and like there's teardrops falling on my clothes, and that was like it felt very much like Ray's experience when she cries in the show. It felt like that because I still was there. Like that just was where my head was. Because it was distributed on Netflix, we have a little bit more time. Usually in simuldubs, you have this really quick turnaround where an episode comes out in Japan in Japanese, and then within like 10 days, it's got to be online in English. So when we were working on a show that's going to Netflix, it's like, okay, well, this is the timeline, and we got to get it done, of course. But they also do control their own distribution plan. So we have, more time if there's I don't know. I mean, basically, you have all the episodes at once from the start instead of like waiting for an episode to drop by the week. You have them all, and you can kind of work through at your own pace. And we had months and months. Like we were working on this I auditioned at the end of 2018, and then started working on it at the beginning of 2019, and then it came out mid 2019. So we were working on it for about half a year.
We're good to go now, Ray. She's all yours.
Carrie is great. When it's going to Netflix and you do have months and months to work on it, you have the time to go through and do scenes as many times as it takes to get them just right. And we did. Because Carrie directs theater, and theater you're rehearsing for sometimes months, at least weeks, before play happens. You do it so many different times. You do it with a little salt of this. You do it with a little pepper of that. You do it with the little color of this. You try that. You try this. You take out that and put back in this. And that's how she did it. It was like, okay, yes, that take is good, but I want to hear this come through. And again, but show a little bit of this. And so then I would do it again, and we would get that. Okay, love it. Wait, pepper back in that. Perfect, and so we would sculpt that thing so carefully. And so yeah, it was just brilliant. I mean, I love working with her. She's an amazing director because she's an amazing actor. Actors make very good directors. So yeah, she was a joy to work with, and I've been fortunate enough to work with her since, and we've become friends, and I feel really blessed to know her. She's a very multi-talented, very highly intelligent person. I saw it when it dropped. Obviously, the night that it dropped, you just never know that like you're actually going to be the voice that's in there until you see it with your own eyes. I'm not going to go on Twitter and announce the role if I'm not even sure that the English audio got uploaded, or that it's me and I didn't get recast at the last minute, like that can happen. So you never want to announce something before you've literally watched it with your own eyes and it's out and you heard yourself. And so we watched it. We stayed up till midnight. I went over to Casey Mongelo's. Casey lives with Kira Buckland, who's another very well-known voice actor, and Beau Bridgeland, who's another voice actor as well. And we stayed up until midnight and watched it together, and it was really nice. I mean, it was a really memorable kind of thing, and we knew like when this drops, our life is going to be different. Like it just is, this is a big one. And we knew too that there was going to be a lot of like potentially, negativity on Twitter and stuff like that. So we wanted to be together because we were also like very fresh off having just recorded the show. I mean, a few weeks, like if you had been recording Evangelion for 6 months and then like you wouldn't be okay a few weeks after having been done. You would be like very much in a tender, delicate mindset, an incredibly, fresh and raw mentality. So we weren't like in a good enough place to like necessarily take that on independently. So in other words, we needed to, and we were able to be together for whatever that night was going to look like. Knowing that there would be a lot of backlash, and yeah, we were together, and that was the right decision, I think, for us emotionally on that night. And we didn't watch the whole thing. Like, we only watched a few episodes, but enough to know, like, it's us. We did not get recast. The voices are us. It's out there. There's credits. Everyone knows it's us. And it sounds good. We were pleased. We were like, wow, this is really it. Like, it's out there, and we're proud of what we did.
In 2021, Amazon would acquire the streaming rights to the rebuilds. This included not only the first 3 movies, but also the final movie, 3.0 plus 1.0. Like Netflix, they produced a completely new dub for the movies, heavily supervised by Studio Khara, released on August 13th.
That whole period was really difficult for me. As I've already said, that was really tough, but I finally kind of got to the other side of it. I was like, well, it has happened. This is reality. There's no denying it. And I'm never going to be Asuka again. I mean, I really absolutely believed that. I had accepted it. I thought that was a true fact. I thought it's done. And people would say, oh, well, you know, the 4th rebuild movie's coming out and you'll definitely come back for that. And I thought, well, they already said they don't want us. So I just assumed that we would be replaced for the 4th movie. I never thought I would be Asuka again.
After the Netflix thing, that was when realism about everything set in, as far as, you know, you're only as good as your last press clipping. And we weren't relics of the 90s, but that was when our big 90s and 2000s were our big heyday. And when they recast that, I thought, well, that's out of our hands forever. Our legacy, we actually thought fans would not really remember us anymore.
After the Netflix version came out, I thought that's the end of it, you know. And I never really gave it a thought. I was very disappointed. But, you know, we're actors and we live in the land of disappointment.
I sort of thought that was a done deal, like as far as my involvement or as far as it coming back. Like, it seemed like whatever was going to be done was going to be done.
And then the Netflix version came back, and then I thought, well, then it's done. It meaning the participation of us originals. I thought it would be completely done.
I don't know that I thought about it. Is that so sad? It's not that I didn't take them seriously. I think it was, here's what I think. Karma, and I'm a Christian, and God and the world, like, there was a lot of love and blood, sweat, and tears put in the original for 28 years. And that 1 year of a redub is not going to erase the thousands and thousands of hours and minutes and time. So maybe I never did. Maybe I just had faith that it would be honored the way that it should be for those that have given so much to it.
So it was in December of 2020, I got an email from my agent. And the email was addressed to me and Allison Keith. And it was about, the subject of the email was that it was regarding a project for which Allison and I had both been hired. Not we're auditioning for, but this is a project, again, for me and Allison Keith, that we had been hired for. And I knew, I mean, instantly. I thought, I did a little, like, quick search through my database there. I was like, nothing else. What other project could there be? Some unnamed mystery project, and especially at that point in time. And I called, the second I got that email, I called Allison. I was like, oh my God, did you get the email? Did you get it? It's Ava. It's Ava. Oh my God. They want us back. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely stunned. I mean, stunned. I couldn't believe it. And then pretty quickly thereafter, I see, I check in with Amanda, got an email, Spike got an email, and I'm just going, oh, holy crap. I mean, this is really happening. I couldn't believe it. I was just flabbergasted. I was stunned.
Yeah, I think my agent called me.
So, bottom line, I was in Australia when I found out. I was there for about 6 or 7 months. I found out. So I found out through my agent. It goes, hey, here's this email. They wanted to make sure I got this to you to see if you do it. And the code name was Skyrocket. And I looked at it and I read it for 2 seconds. I'm like going, this is Ava, man. So immediately I was like, Amanda, Tiffany, you got it too? I said, yes. I'm like, okay, here we go, y'all.
And so we were contacted, I would say, 6 months before we started recording to see what our interest was. And we're like, what? What is this? Because we just literally had been burned on the Netflix thing.
And they said, hey, we just want you to know, are you interested in, bringing this character back? And of course, yes, I'd love to. And they said, well, here's what we're going to do. And here's the plan. And then, they wanted lots of time. They were like, before we started doing anything, I think they were really trying to assemble the cast to make sure they could get as many people as possible.
So somebody contacted me. At first, I had to audition again. At first, they were like, well, we want to do the original voices. And I was like, well, if you're doing the original voices of the rebuild, then Brina Palencia is the one that you need to talk to. I was the original voice of Ray in this series. And they're like, well, send us an audition. I'm like, God damn it. Why does everybody make me audition for Ray? Ray is part of me. Ray is 14-year-old me. Like, ugh.
They wanted us to upload just a few lines of dialogue. And that was really we want to hire you, but can you still do, like none of us had done these characters for a few years. So they just wanted to make sure we still sound the same. We can still do it, And when Amanda got that, I mean, maybe I'm not supposed to be telling stories about Amanda, but this was the interaction that we had. Amanda got that message, like that basically that she was auditioning for Ray, and she was, no, forget them. I'm cleaning up the language here, but forget those people. It's Netflix all over again. I'm not auditioning for those people because we had all auditioned for Netflix, and it was humiliating. It was degrading. It was awful. And I said, and I begged her. I said, no, please, 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 Amanda. I want you to be in this. I want you to do it. Please just send them. All they want to know is, I'm sure that they just want to check, just make sure. I mean, at that point, she hadn't recorded Ray Ayanami in about 20 years. I mean, for her, it had been a really long time. And I said, please just let them know you can still do it. You are still Ray. You can do this.
It's very frustrating, but I understand their position. And they just said, yeah, no, we want you.
An amazing experience in a way, because it sort of felt like a vindication. When I went into the studio to record, Joe Freya, the director, he said to me right off the bat, and of course he's in my earphones, like I wasn't seeing him in person. I was recording in Atlanta and he's in LA. Said, Tiffany, you're Asuka. I'm not here to tell you how to be Asuka. You know who Asuka is. When we got approached about this and they said, what do you want to do about the casting? I said, let's don't do what Netflix did. So that was kind of their mantra is, oh, let's don't Netflix this.
I had no idea what Evangelion was when Dubbing Brothers came to me with the project. It was very early on in the pandemic, and there obviously wasn't a lot going on. And this came up, and I just said yes before I even heard what it was. I was working at Dubbing Brothers USA, the studio that did dub the Evangelion rebuild films. And, that's when I was working at that studio, we were just working on a lot of different dubbing projects for all kinds of clients, including, like Netflix and Amazon, obviously, who did this dub. And I remember my manager just coming to, the production team like any other day saying, hey, so we have a project coming in. It's very high profile. It's very, top secret. We have to be very careful about this. It's very secure. And I'm just like, okay, interesting. What is it? And she goes, she tried, she didn't know how to pronounce it at first. And she just tried to go like Neon Genesis Evangelion. And I just go like Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like I instantly, the minute that she said, I was like flinging my arms up in the air, and I was just so incredibly excited. I was so surprised too that Amazon, who we had worked with in the past on a few projects, came to us and said, hey, we would like for you to dub this project.
And then I found out what it actually, what the project was, and I just had to kind of look it up, and figure it out at the time. We were hired to do the fourth movie initially. Veronica was the big fan. Veronica was the one who was, across the board was very excited. There was an even back and forth. I would lean on her a lot. She had much more experience in animation than I did. As a matter of fact, I think she was the sort of lead production manager on Ladybug.
So as production manager, my responsibilities for the film were essentially to be the point person between our creative team, which is our voice actors, our audio engineers, and our directors, as well, and then to also keep them connected with the client in Amazon and the studio. And so I was the point person kind of telling our creative team, hey, here are notes, here's the direction, here's any other additional information from the client and from the studio that you'll need in order to record the project. I was in charge of scheduling a lot of our talent for their recording sessions. I was in charge of making sure that we are staying on track with getting, everything in when they are due. When we were given the project, we were only given the fourth movie at the time. There had been no decision, or rather, we didn't know if it would be a complete redub of everything. We just had a big responsibility to dub the final movie in this franchise. And so when it came to the casting, there was kind of two things involved. One of them was we wanted to try and be as consistent as possible with the previous films, because again, we thought this was the only one we were going to be doing. And so we wanted to just try and keep everything as consistent as possible. We obviously know that there's the possibility of some changes when you go through the whole process, but again, we just wanted to keep it as consistent as possible. And I think we also we did want to try and bring back as many of the original actors as possible, because there are some people like Spike, who's been Shinji since the very beginning, and it's like, this is the big finale. We really would love Spike to be a part of this. And so it was, as I kind of mentioned, a combination of trying to be consistent and also bringing people back who had previously played these characters for this finale.
I think I don't remember initially whose idea it was. It might have been mine. I don't want to give myself credit where credit isn't due, but I know I was an early champion of understanding that this is connected to fandom in such a specific way that we should do everything we can for the fandom on that level. Being a fan of other franchises myself, I understand the point of view of fandom and how it's a delicate thing. But when it comes to a legacy cast, I know for sure that you want to do as much as you can to respect that legacy. So we were very much early on board for casting with original cast members, and that's the process. It started sort of as an idea with the office reaching out to some of the cast members slowly to see if the there was availability. And then it became clear very quickly that one after another was available and willing to do it, and it just built and built, and we ended up getting as you know, a fair amount of them back.
I was the one reaching out to all the actors, and that was a very good learning experience for me, is what I'll say, as a production manager, because in the past, when we would do castings for other projects that we were working on, we usually worked with a director who would kind of already have contacts, or would put out like a casting call, and we would have information and like websites from actors who are auditioning for these roles. When it came to Ava, we had talent who had been a part of this series for so long, and it was talent who, at least in my time of working there, I hadn't worked with yet. So we didn't have like emails or phone numbers for these actors to reach out to and be like, hey, this project is happening. Like, we would like to have you back, join us. So that was a really big learning experience to try and track down some of the actors, to get in touch with them, so that way we could ask them back to this project. And eventually I got in contact with Amanda Wynn Lee, who has such a rich and deep history with the show. And she also had worked with all these actors before, who she still had their contact information. And so that's kind of how we went from there.
As soon as they called me in, I was like, this is awesome. Do you need the numbers of the other actors that did this last time? Because I'm happy to give them to you. And they're like, oh, actually, there's a couple that we couldn't find. And I'm like, there you go. Done and done.
It was because Amanda was part of the, she's working with Dubbing Brothers, and said, I can get you in touch with everybody from the original cast. And one of them was her having them reach out to me.
I was so surprised and happy when I recently moved to Nashville, and I thought it was really neat that it was important to them that they get the same people.
I was over the moon excited.
The way I heard about it, I was on a plane and I got a call to check my email to sign an NDA so they could call me. I was like, what? And they didn't tell me what it was about. It was just like, we have a role for you. No name, no anything. We have a role we're interested in giving you, but we need you to sign this NDA and then we'll call you. And so I was like, what is this? So I signed the NDA really quick. And then when I got off, when I got to the other end, there was a message for me from the wonderful Veronica Valencia. Like, she's fantastic. And she explained to me, there's something you've done before. We want you to reprise this role. But I don't even think then she told me what it was. It was like, then I signed so many NDAs for this project. I can't even tell you how many I signed. And so it took a long time. So there was all this shroud of mystery around it. And I think it was a couple days before I actually knew that it was Ava. And I was like, oh my, and then I was thrilled. How many times in your career do you get to grow up with a character? I mean, I'll tell you, never. Like, you get to play her when she's a kid, and then you get to play her when she's grown up, and, almost decades apart. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Obviously, we couldn't get Aaron Crone. He's, doing Shakespeare someplace. He's a real theater actor.
I tried to talk him into it. I wrote to him a couple of times, like, dude, look who's sending this. It's Amazon. You want to do this? Come on, let's do that. But he also, he has a family that he was busy with, so I get it.
Yeah, they called me and they said, we want you to do it. And it was a slightly weird impersonal kind of reach out. And, they don't know me. So, but I was like, okay, well, yeah, I would certainly be interested. And, it was coming out of the pandemic, so everyone was feeling weird. And I was like, well, how much does it pay? Which is a normal question. And I said, well, you find someone who's willing to take that ridiculously low sum. And I still regretted it, right? I still felt guilty because it was like, even though I hadn't done it for so long, you kind of feel like it's your part, and So every once in a while I kick myself. I don't kick myself like those things in life that you really regret at all, but I do sometimes wish it was the pandemic. I should have just said, sure. So to some extent, it was silly to say, no, that's an insulting amount. On the other hand, I'm a professional actor. Like, that's the only thing I've ever done that's actually like a vocation that has paid me, that literally at times has supported me and my family. And so to tell me they're going to pay me the number they said, I just thought, no, sorry, I can't. Frankly, I wish I just said yes. Not even for any regrets. Just as like if I had to do it over, I'd say yes this time. You know what I mean?
I did not get a request to come back, but I think part of that is the fact that the people who got the calls to come in were people who had basically become iconic to the characters. They had done them in almost every version except for the Netflix version.
I had heard about them, and I guess I was kind of surprised I didn't get a call back for those.
I had not kept up with it more recently, and when I saw that those were done, and I thought, well, if they're remaking movies, wouldn't they want the original cast? But I guess not.
I did not know that existed. I didn't know the second or the third one existed. I didn't know the fourth one existed. I'm the man that time forgot. Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always up to doing voice acting. I mean, yeah, it would have been nice, but I didn't even know that it occurred until now. So
I know that there were some other things, like some movies, and then obviously recently Netflix bought it, and didn't even reach out to me because I'm very available now. But obviously, I had a couple of different people.
Of course, when I found out this, I was disappointed. I would have loved to have been a part of it, but things work out for a reason.
Like I said, changing my name and moving probably didn't help connect the dots.
I think it's just because they didn't know how to get a hold of me.
That would have been fun to revisit that again.
All of my stuff is on IMDb. I think there's probably, but I was in over, I think, 75 different anime films. So, but again, I understand they're probably trying to bring in people that were more currently involved or more involved in the business.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm not really sure why. That definitely wasn't my call or my intention. But yeah, I mean, it was somewhere, like I said, in the casting, it was equal parts, me and my crew, and I've leaned on my crew heavily, especially in the early days, because I knew so very little about the franchise. So, so I leaned on my crew to give me that information, and to use their best judgment when it came to casting. So I'm not naming any names, but it could be that somebody along those lines had different ideas.
Exactly, sir. You misconstrued your own happiness with his.
So the way it fell on my lap. Okay, so I have a buddy who was directing this current rebuild, right? He's a director friend of mine. His name is Joe Freya. Awesome, talented director. I've worked with him for a few years prior on other projects, live dubs and other things like that, right? So he reached out to me via text, just, hey, I got a pretty big anime. Can't say what it is right now yet, but I think you'd be perfect for such and such role. You'll find out when you get here, basically. And then off the record, I guess we called each other and he told me what it was. And I was pretty floored. And especially, playing Ryoji Kaji, I was like, oh, whoa, that is cool, man. So I got pretty excited about that. So yeah, but the truth be told, I didn't audition. But don't tell anybody. Well, I guess it's the cat's out of the bag here, but so I got very fortunate and very lucky in that regards. So that's kind of how it happened, man.
All stations are now in battle stations. Condition 1.
I'm not gonna lie, I gave it to myself, but I was a voice actor and actor for many years, and I always give myself, I'm sort of Hitchcockian in my dubs, where I always give myself usually a very small role.
It's become this thing in the English dub, this tradition for the producer to do the voice of Hyuga.
And when I heard that, it gave me all the permission in the world to go for it.
I should introduce myself. I'm Mari, Makanami Illustrious.
I work with the studio that did the dubbing for the Amazon redubs, and they actually sent me the audition. I didn't know anything about it. They were keeping it all very hush hush, and it was a very quick audition. They were like, "We need this back ASAP." They're looking to cast this character. I had, and I've mentioned this before, I had a feeling I knew what it was, but that was just because even though I hadn't seen, I hadn't watched the dubs of the Evangelion films prior to that, I was familiar with it because I went through a phase where I wasn't really involved in anime. Life took over and I was very much focused on my career and everything. But I was still very much aware that these films existed. I was aware of the characters. I was aware of this character Mari, in the fandoms and everything. And I knew that the film was getting ready to come out, because at that point I had been working in anime and got back into the anime world, so to say. So I was very much aware that the film was coming out. And just the way that the script for the audition it seemed very familiar to me. And I was like, I wonder if it's for this, even though, you can't ask and they're not going to tell you. It's all hush hush. And I ended up being right. So it was like, yeah, that's how I got it. Some people did not have to audition for their roles. And I'm sure you've heard that. Some people were invited back. Some people were auto-cast in roles. But for Mari, I did audition. It was an audition process where, I was selected for it. And yeah, that's how I got it.
Unmanned fleet has been locked into position for launch.
Well, I had already done some work before for Joe, and he reached out to me about it because he was already familiar with my work and felt that I would be a good voice match. And so I got the email asking if I wanted to come in and speak for the role, to which, of course, I lost all my mind. And it was like, absolutely, are you kidding? Yes.
Yeah, we want to return the sea and the land back to this color.
It's all a pool of work, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not sure what I've auditioned for and what I haven't. If you get caught up in that as an actor, it can be really dangerous and painful. I mean, I'd worked with Joe and the people over there on many different projects, doing all sorts of different stuff. So I'd like mostly foreign dubs and that kind of thing. So I knew those guys over there already.
Routing power to the main guns. No abnormalities in energy flow.
Yeah, Joe Freya just called me in. He knew my voice from other projects, and we'd worked together before. So I think he did send me a small scratch track to work on, and from there, just, hey, come on in, let's do it this week. So
we tried to have the voices be a little bit more consistent with the previous films. Again, that was kind of the big task that we were given, as I had previously mentioned, because again, we just had this movie. We didn't have anything else to be like, okay, we'll make our own consistency. We definitely were building off of movies that had already been done.
Prior to doing that, I tried rewatching the original series, right? I believe it was the original dub. It's whatever was in Netflix at that time. Then most likely not. I believe it was I'm not sure if it was my friend Greg who did it then. But hearing his Kaji and just kind of going on YouTube and rewatching clips here and there, yeah, there's an essence, because they did request that of me to kind of not emulate it, but have that feel of it, right?
So, can I buy you a drink? Cup o' tea? Have tea with me. It'll be fun.
How are you? Would you like to go on a date?
Because I know I talked to Greg prior too as well, right? And he had his reasons as well for not doing, because apparently they did invite him back as well, but he couldn't do it at the time as well. But so being invited to do that and knowing that, again, there's that whole aspect of filling these shoes, right? So if anything, I kind of tried my best to look past that. Okay, I'm in here to kind of be cast as a replacement. These guys were the forerunners for this character in the English dub. So I tried to also just give myself a little bit of a spin to it.
Again, I was familiar with the character. I
didn't watch the other dubs. They're amazing though. The Funimation dubs directed by Mike McFarland. Love him, and I think he's amazing, an amazing voice director. That entire cast was fantastic, and Trina was fantastic. And I loved what she brought to Mari.
And there it is! Deployed field!
Here's my target, raising AT field!
And there was no voice matching, there was no reference or anything like that. There was nothing like that. And then going into it, it was kind of, I know that we were working with the clients very closely, and it was more or less what, I guess they were happy with.
I went in with my own thing. I saw how the character was behaving. I saw the lines, and I kind of just did whatever came to me with regards to who he was physically, and did my best to kind of complement that.
Nobody's ready to die when they die, kid.
When you die, and that is it.
That character kind of lends itself to a specific kind of vibe anyway. So if you're going to do that character, it's got to be kind of that. He's a guy, you know what I mean?
They did play some of the stuff. I think they specifically said, don't try to voice match. Don't try to be this person. Make it your own interpretation. I think we ended up being fairly close, though, in how we sound. So
next, close the bulkheads? Is that it?
Closing and securing the bulkheads. Is this it?
I did get reference for how she sounded and was asked to match it. And really it was when I came in and actually spoke for the role with Joe that I mostly focused on just his direction and his guidance. And he felt that I would already be a fairly close match. So I tried to not get too much in my head about that.
Okay, so aerial attacks show up here.
Gotta be vigilant about aerial attacks.
Part of my responsibilities was to watch it down, make note of all of the characters, any characters that are returning, any characters that are new, to help with the director later on in the process, and just to get an idea of what the story is and kind of what project that we're getting into. And I just remember it was so exciting. It was so exciting to not only be able to watch this very important anime movie as an anime fan, but also this finale for the first time. And I just remember I was sitting there in my office and I was watching it. I was taking my notes and I was like, oh man, this is so cool. This is truly super exciting. And I am so happy that I get to do this and I get to be a part of this.
Yeah, we were recording it in December and January, December 2020 and January 2021. We were recording for Thrice Upon a Time. And when we were recording it at that time, it was scheduled to be released on March 8th of 2021. Of course, it didn't actually come out until Friday, August 13th, 2021. But at the time, that's what we thought. That's what we were told. And I think maybe it did come out in Japan on that day.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, to be honest. Wow, I guess it was a huge privilege, Yeah, because we did it before the movie even came out in Japan. We had done the dub.
It felt very exciting. It felt very secretive.
It's an honor. It's a real honor.
It was sort of like oh, this is going to be good, man. They're going to be destroyed. I just knew they had no idea what was coming, because before I saw it, I had no idea what was coming. So I was actually I was interested to see what the reaction was going to be.
Don't get me wrong. It was pretty cool. It was pretty exciting that, of course, I was able to get to watch it and get to know. But then there's the other side where it's like, man, I have to wait however long until it comes out for other people to see it. And then for me to finally talk about it with my friends.
To know, I had friends who were talking about Evangelion and the final film and stuff like that beforehand, and to know what I knew. Yeah, it was hard to keep in, because I just wanted to be like, oh, you guys, it's so beautiful. And I couldn't.
I mean, it was fun. It was fun to be in on a secret. And it was fun to know
to kind of, I was excited about how fans would feel once it was announced. You know, that was a fun lead up, a lot of anticipation.
Now, of course, when you're recording in the studio, you're not just sitting there watching the movie. I'm only seeing the parts that Asuka is in.
So, you know, the way it works is you got your lines, you read your lines, you watch your scenes, and then whatever else happens, if your voice isn't on it, you're not going to see that part. So the very end, I actually didn't know what was going to happen in the very end.
Not long after, we found out as a company that Amazon was unable, for whatever reason, I don't want to speculate, to get the dub from you know, the DVD dubs, which I think was what, Funimation. So Amazon decided that we were going to redub the you know, the first 3 movies, which was exciting to me because it meant a lot more work.
And so the first thing we did is we recorded Thrice Upon a Time. That's what we recorded first.
We did the last movie, and then we went back and did the first, second, third.
You know, so we went backwards in a way, opposed to, and I was grateful for that, because I do think about it sometimes, if I would have played her differently, if I had started from the second film going to the fourth.
Last movie first, I think, but we jumped around quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember how the timeline worked. I know that we were going to jump into the fourth movie first, and we might have started it or got most of it done, and then went back and went in order 1, 2, 3. I think it was something to that effect, because I do remember that Spike particularly wasn't available when we were doing 4, and then his schedule opened up to start with 1. I think so by the time we get to 4, it was his first time doing 4. I think that's how it broke down.
I want to say I didn't. I want to say I went all the way, and then I did the last one, and I was like, yes.
We did the first 3, if I remember correctly, we did the first 3 movies kind of pretty quick. And then we had to wait a little while before we got into the 4th movie.
Yeah, and it was different all across the board. Like I said, like, you know, like it just depended on who was available, you know, right up front, and like we sort of found out about 1, 2, 3, like you know, within that little window where we started, and you know, and we sort of rejiggered, and there, like Amazon had different priorities, and also like 4 was still being worked on, so. You know, I think the choice was then to just focus on going in order, in order to give them time to finish 4 and to get everybody ramped up to 4 as well.
And of course, with this, I mean, you know, top secret.
Yeah, and of course I was thinking, who would I tell, and would I know what it was I'm talking about?
It felt like you had the secret to, I mean, it was so secretive. So even Amanda and I wouldn't talk about it. Like no one told anybody else that we were doing it. You were crossing your fingers hoping that everyone was doing it, because they didn't tell you who was cast. But, you know, sometimes you'll sign those NDAs and people will, you know, insidery, you'll be like, oh, hey, are you doing Ava 2? Are you doing, but I think we were all terrified of letting anything slip. So it wasn't like I mentioned it. I didn't mention it to one soul, not a best friend, not someone who was involved. Sometimes there were conversations with other voice actors and you kind of were like, oh, they're doing it. And we're just both not saying it, but like something's happening. So I guess it felt like a kind of responsibility. This was funny. I don't do anything without approving the script ahead of time. And that was kind of a newish thing around then. Like I have to read the script before I do it. And so I let them know I want to read the script, and they said no. And I said, and they were like, well, what can we do to, you know, and I said, well, I like to read it because I like to make sure there's nothing that, you know, no sort of just anything that I don't want out there, that I don't want to put my stamp of approval on. And so they said, we understand, but we can't let you read it. So they said, can you give us a list of the kind of things that you would be concerned about? So I gave them a list, and then they said, you can talk to the director. And then Veronica also, she went through and she very thoroughly listed any kind of situation that might fall under that category, which there weren't that many, but she was like, oh, well, this is said here, or there's a situation where this is said, or where this is done. They were super thorough. And I was like, this is so much work. Wouldn't it be just easier to send me the script? So it really did feel like quite a responsibility to know that it was happening. But I only knew that it was happening, like no details. I didn't know who was in it.
I didn't know when I first started recording who the rest of the cast was, and that's very typical of voiceover. You don't always know who the other actors are. Sometimes you do, but in this case I didn't. So I remember thinking, and I was one of the first ones to record because I remember not hearing any of the other voices, on the tracks. And sometimes you'll hear the other English voices and you're like, oh, I bet that's so-and-so, but I didn't. So when I found out that the cast was a lot of the original cast, it was very exciting for me.
They've added even more explosives. It looks like they're losing faith in us.
That there's got to be something of a slightly different approach just because I've been playing Asuka for such a long time. If I think back to playing Asuka 25 years ago or playing Asuka now, I mean, there's inherently a difference because I've just been doing it for so long.
But my favorite character, aside from Mari, has always been Asuka. I really understand that character, and what helped me is once I learned especially that Tiffany was coming back to play her, I'm very familiar with Tiffany's performance as her and know where she takes the character, so it was so easy for me to interact with Asuka.
I think like Tiffany's role is absolutely 100% my favorite, and that's my favorite character. I have a bobblehead. Asuka's my favorite. I have a bobblehead of her.
A lot of people were working out of local studios who have their own engineers, and that was great. I mean, it's much better to do that than to have somebody work without an engineer on their end, just out of their booth or whatever, because you have somebody, monitoring writing levels and all that stuff.
I was hired to do the local recordings of Tiffany here in Atlanta. I had heard of it before working on it, but honestly, didn't know much about it at all until Tiffany Grant came and wanted my help on the project. I had recorded her for other projects, probably mostly in the anime world. There might have been some non-anime stuff, but I'd recorded her on a bunch of similar stuff, and she just comes to me for all of her records in Atlanta. It was obvious that she lived and breathed this character. I mean, she didn't need any help from the director. She didn't need any direction. She just launched into the character. And it was kind of amazing. Like it's a very easy transition for her to go from her normal self into the character. They're almost one and the same. She's just such a treat to be around. Just the most pleasant person in the world. And like I said earlier, she lives and breathes that character. She's just so excited to be there, and she's going to give it 110% all the time.
I want to settle this for myself.
I thought it was great. It's so many different ways to go and to explore the characters and, work out this whole daddy issue thing and get it done, man. I thought it was great.
AT field, full power.
Rey is always a part of me. It's never difficult to come back to Rey. I went to the same character play / voice setup that I did before because that's how I knew that's how Rey talks. That's just cemented for me.
No, I'm not Ayanami.
Joe was really good at leading me through, like, okay, you know what? She's gone back to being reset. She's gone back to her original. So let's take it back down and make this a little more mechanical again. Things like that. So he got a lot of nuance into Rey that I thought was pretty cool.
Right now, I want to entrust everything to Shinji.
It was such a joy to come back to something that was normal and used to be known in such an uncertain time in our world. It was lovely.
Oh God, dude, Allison. I think David Cobb still has a library of Allison. She would at least every line, every take we would do would be like, going and going and going, and I'm gonna fuck my butt. She would just curse the weirdest, Texas like sailor mouth curses in the middle of, but with the voice, of the character, and it was, we were rolling. Sometimes it was hard for us to get through it because we were all just laughing so hard.
I merely appended upon my body information that lies outside the logos of our realm.
There's definitely an evolution of where you started and where you're kind of ending up, and there's definite differences and distinctive differences. But I love where the voice is now. I love doing Gendo.
Recognize me? It's me, boss. Suzahara Toji. If you watch the re-records of the movies that were on Amazon, you can hear that I did it. There was a different idea of going on with that than, imitating someone else and trying to create a character that way.
It's been so long. Shinji and Miss Ayanami. She's totally different, right? She grew up. So the way we did it was Joe Faria, the director, when we first went in, we recorded them in order, and he played me my kid voice, like when I first did it. And we were trying to figure out if we were going to have to fiddle with it or how we were going to do it, but I was able to match my kid voice. And so we did that. And then it was fun to see how, we talked a lot about the through line, how she was kind of this goody two shoes. Like her function in the first one was very comedic, goody two shoes, foil, teacher's pet, tisk, tisk, tisk. And then after she grew up, the function was so different. She was soft, and she was teaching Rey how to be human. That's how it was explained to me.
Both Avas secured and launched position.
It was important for her to sound as young as she was when I started with her, and I am not. I have aged, and Maya has not aged. So it was a fun challenge to find her vocally in the same place as if she had not aged at all. That was a fun acting challenge.
Non-combatants, stand by.
I've not done a compare and contrast of what I just did a couple years ago in the movies versus the series, because I was many years younger during that time. I've still got a very deep adult voice, but I'm sure it's aged over the years.
All we do for the Human Instrumentality Project.
Yeah, I kept with the same work ethic that I brought to the first one, where I put together it was sort of like a beautiful mind wall, and I really delved into I listened to the previous thing so I could remember what my voice sounded like. Other than that was it.
I do love Mari. Mari is my favorite because, of course, voicing her, it gives me kind of a depth of her character, that I feel like I do feel like I understand her. Whether anybody agrees with that or not, that's okay. I genuinely feel like I understand this character. And I love that she's pink. Her suit's pink. And I just love her.
I loved Deneen as Mari Illustrious Makinami. As much as I'm not really a fan of that character, to be honest, but I liked Deneen as the character.
Oh, I love Mari. Deneen nailed her. Deneen was so good. I was blown away by how well she just meshed with that character.
She took over that movie, really, right?
When I, again, started playing her and learned about her and everything, and was watching, you know, the scenes and like actually getting to know her, even like talking with the director, you know, Joe and stuff, I was just like, I was putting a lot of myself into Mari. And by that I mean just like even just the coyness and the kind of eccentricness or the weirdness.
You've done great. You should be proud of yourself, Shinji Ikari.
I put a lot of myself into her and see a lot of myself in her character, even watching it in Japanese.
So being able to play Kaji was like, oh, whoa, that's cool. And again, because, you know, when you're a kid, he always comes off as this really cool character. He's suave, almost like he's not James Bond-esque, but, you know, he's kind of cool in that sense, right? So, you know, I remember having, like, I have vivid memories still of watching Evangelion as a kid and muting certain scenes and just doing my own thing with subtitles, of course, because, you know, it's there. And, you know, obviously I'm my little kid voice then, but trying to be these characters. So I guess that's like me being a proto dubber, I guess. So I think Kaji is probably one of my favorite characters. One, because of his role in the entire storyline, but also two, because my own personal connection to Evangelion.
He came perfectly natural. And again, you know, I followed the same rules that I told all the actors to follow. I just listened to that original performance and took all my cues from the Japanese actor that played him. You know, he's a smart dude who, you know, is a little out of his league, you know, and I just loved his freakouts, you know, like.
I would say she is doing an amazing job for what she has gone through and the suffering that she has gone through. Just someone with endurance and with strength and stick-to-itness, ultimately, is how I would describe her.
What would I call Koji? Determined, yeah. Full of purpose. Questioning, but full of purpose.
He's kind of a goofball the way I played him. You know, he's not that serious. I think he thinks he's smarter than he is, which is always fun to do. But yeah, I mean, he's just one of the gang. I think that one reason that Joe wanted to bring me in for it, because he knows me and he knows that we have a lot of similarities in me and the, you know, in the character itself. So I think, you know, he kind of read it and knew it, and so I think it was just a kind of a natural transition, natural process. I think on this particular show, I did 5 or 6 different voices, including the one that we're talking about now. So I did a lot of background, a lot of Walla. You know, I was in there for an entire day just making up random dialogue in the background that you'll never hear probably unless you, like, you know, really specifically get into it.
Yes, there were maybe 1 or 2 more incidental roles that I had done. I don't think anybody on camera, or when I say on camera, like on screen, right? I think there was a moment, and I cannot tell you which one it was, which film it was, but there was a launch sequence where essentially it's just kind of like, you know how NASA has Capcom for their space missions. So it's kind of like that. It was like basically in preparation, you know, now launching this, prepare this, and da-da-da-da-da, and in launching in 3, 2, 1. They're basically in the process of launching the Evas.
I think I voiced a few other a doctor. I think I did do a few other characters, but more ancillary in terms of what I was doing there, you know.
I might have hopped in there for, you know, some of the background chatter.
I feel like I did a lot of those minor. They just need, you know, like Phil. Like you've got 5. I did do that. You know, 5 people talking on top of each other when the whole structure's collapsing. You know,
a lot of the stuff we did, you know, we did some wild lines and made up some stuff that wasn't in the script, And I remember we went for a while and just, you know, started just talking about whatever. And it was so far in the background, but it's just, you know, but we got to at one point and the whole room just kind of lost it because they forgot what we were doing. And we just started like, it got to be so bizarre and out there. And I think there were watermelons involved and squirrels and, you know, it got a little weird.
All of that background, you know, technical speak is so, you know, it's so important, you know, as you probably know, it's all written and very specific. And there's a ton of it. So, you know, we had people jumping in and out of that all the time.
And I think we did it. We were still near the tail end of the lockdown, I think.
Yeah, it was during COVID, so we had to be super, super careful.
It brought special challenges specifically for talent that were in LA. And maybe they weren't necessarily challenges. Maybe I think that at the end of the day, it was more just like making sure that we were doing things as safely as possible, keeping everybody's safety in mind.
The studio was almost entirely empty except for our fearless engineer and our fearless director. And the actors could not overlap at all. So there was nobody waiting to come in when actor number 1 was done, then actor number 2 would come right in. So there was none of that. There was I think an hour between each session.
They allowed the room to air out essentially with air purifiers prior to each actor's session, in between, I should say.
Getting into the studio was all required masks until you got into the booth.
Well, you know, when we got to the studio, you had to have your temperature taken, and there was we tried to be, you know, pretty careful about social distancing and stuff. One thing is, though, when it comes to dubbing, I mean, here I am as the voice actor. I'm inside an enclosed booth.
Changing out headphones every single time someone new comes in. We were doing all kinds of, like, what's the right word? Just like cleansing the pop filters on the microphones, cleaning every possible surface, wearing a mask all the time. Luckily, studio is a pretty good place to be during the pandemic.
Like, yeah, it was very different. Once you got in the booth, though, all that fell away. You just worked.
The safest place in the world to be is a recording studio during COVID, because you're locked away. You're in a booth by yourself. I mean, there's no COVID can't get in or get out, you know?
I mean, it really brought home, I need to make sure that I have a good rig at home, and my studio, which I had set up, you know, years. I'd been setting this thing up for years already.
So I recorded all of the films except for the third one in this space right here. This is my home studio. This is where I recorded it. So I know that there were some challenges with things, you know, with sound and stuff like that. My booth is good, but it's always harder when you have to record remotely and the engineer is like on the other side. You know, and everybody's sounds are different. Everybody's microphones are different and stuff like that. The third movie, actually, by that time, we were able to go back into the studio. So I live in Los Angeles. I know some of the other actors. Spike was, I believe, still in Australia. You know, and Tiffany was where Tiffany is, and Allison.
Now, the production company who was doing it, they were based in LA. And this is absolutely a true story. Originally, they had asked us like to record it in our home studios, and I have a small home studio and I do a little bit of stuff here, but Allison does not do that. She does not do that. And I called her. I was like reading this email to her about the studio specifications and, you know, record all of these test files. And I started reading it to her, and she's like, Tiffany, I need you to do this. Shut your mouth, you know? Because, I mean, she is like, no, I mean, we're friends, so it's okay. But, I mean, it was really funny because we were both a little bit panicked. Like, they expect that we are going to record all of this, like, in our homes. We're going to record all that yelling and everything. It's like, I can't do that. No, you have to do a studio. You have to get a studio for that. And so there was a studio here in Atlanta, Westside Studios, that I had worked with on some other projects. Like I had recorded One Piece episode of East Blue there, and I kind of got that set up for us to record the Ava movies there.
It's interesting because it was such a high profile project, they did not send the video over. They streamed it from their end, and we just watched the individual scenes that we were going to do over here, and they beeped her in from their side. I'm just making sure that the recordings were good, but that's kind of a unique process to anime and dubbing. I think like traditional ADRs, they send the whole picture over. Both sides have it. You can watch the whole thing. You can go into any scene, but this is everything's on their side. They were adamant that it had to be done that way, and there was no chance that it was going to be actually sent over. I didn't even it's just so rare. I didn't realize at the time how important it was.
It had 3 watermarks across the screen. We could barely even see the video. The director, Joe Freya, said that the project had Pentagon level security attached to it.
So I found a studio. I found a guy who I could work with in his studio. In his studio, he was a sound engineer. We recorded it in Pimpama, Australia, in a closet. That's how it went, the entire thing. And some pickups from my closet in my apartment on the Gold Coast. And it was all done there, and it was amazing, and I loved it. So the closet, for him, it was a closet. There were clothes and things, but he was a sound engineer, and it sounded perfect. I was like, are you kidding me? How great is this? It was all awesome, because my guy would have to come pick me up. His name is Mike Leonard, by the way, and he's a sound guy. He does DJ stuff, all kinds of stuff. He's really super cool. And he would come pick me up. It would take 20 minutes to get to me, and then pick me up, and then take me to his house, and we would do the whole thing, and then he'd bring me back. So we got to know each other and his family, and it was a really great guy, and I made friendships, and I did it in freaking Australia. I would finish my screaming and everything, and then I'd walk 2 blocks to the beach and walk on one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. So yes, it was awesome.
I was in my studio space in East Nashville. We just moved to East Nashville. My partner Janet became a minister at a church in Nashville, so I was at the parsonage, so which is the house that's owned by the church, and so I was in a semi-holy place talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
We did it here at I recorded here at my house. It was funny because it was a group call, and I was connected to LA, but there was also a person from France that was helping as well, if I remember correctly. So, once you figure out what the technology is, it's not difficult to do. It's like all I have to do is act. I don't need to have someone standing in front of me to act. I can do it in a booth.
So I worked at a studio here in Houston. That's a remote studio that I work out of, and they do a lot of remote work for Funimation and Crunchyroll and Sentai and stuff in LA.
I was recording in Afshar's home here in Houston because it was COVID, and I would record. Afshar would be ADing. Audio engineering, and I would have Joe Freya in my ears in Los Angeles. And then every line we'd have to upload and wait for it to get, and pray that it would get there. It was amazing.
We did all the rebuilds. I only recorded twice. And the first time, the first time I was in Houston and the second time I was in New York. And in Houston, I went to a studio, and it was a home studio, but it was someone else. There was an engineer. It was an engineer's home, but it wasn't like a normal studio. And the director was in LA, and the engineer was in France. So it was this, and then there was an engineer with me in the studio. So we had these 4 people across 4 time zones. And I guess it was the first time they had done that. And so we were having technical problems. So I was scheduled for a 2-hour session, but it took an hour and 45 minutes to get the technical problems done. So, like, resolved. So I only had 15 minutes. And so we were like, it was like, oh, are we going to be able to do this? And we did. It was so fast. But then the second recording session I did was in New York. And I, at the time, didn't have a home studio because I always went into studios to record, but all the studios here were shut down. So what actually happened the second time, I mean, it was a sight. I wish someone would have taken pictures. The engineer from France, we had before we worked, like several days, maybe a week before we worked, we had a separate session where we checked the sound in my apartment. And it was funny because they said things like, so just go in a walk-in closet. I was like, so clearly you've never been to New York City. Like, there are not walk-in closets. And so I was sitting on my bed with a chair behind me, balancing on the bed, and a stool in front of me, and a blanket. Like, I built a blanket fort on my bed. But then we were having trouble because we weren't getting lows that we needed. It was too muffled. So I had to build this really complicated fort where it was a fort that had 2 holes on either side. And I have a lot of windows in my bedroom, and the windows are terrible. Like, it was just like the worst setup. And so the whole second time, the way the sound had to be arranged, and I had my computer, I wasn't even using a mic. They actually just got it from my Mac, like my MacBook Pro microphone, and the engineer is such a genius. He was able to clean it up from that. But so I'm there with my MacBook open and reading the ribbon, right? And I'm holding up with both of my hands. So I have and my head is holding it too. So I'm literally I'm like this. Like, it's the worst vocal production possible, right? Like, and trying to read a script I've never seen before. And Joe is over here in a little box on my computer, and the engineer is over here in a little box on my computer. And I'm literally getting a workout with my arms. And you should let your throat be kind of open, and like, you shouldn't have some weight on your head. But I mean, it was ridiculous and hilarious. But you do what you got to do. So there were no studios open at the time. There was nowhere for me to go. And so we just had to work with what we could work with, because we were trying to figure out for a long time what I was going to do studio wise. I was really late in the process. Like, when I laid my track down, like, I think I may have been the last person to record. It was months after I signed the contract months before we actually figured out. That was part of the drama, I guess.
As far as I know, we recorded everything. I did not have any idea. I found out later on, and this is like a Dubbing Brothers thing. They had never done an anime before, and apparently something that they typically do in live action is they will either blend the voices or use the original, like, exertion type noises from the original language actor. I strongly disagree with that. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think, and I love Yuko Miyamura. It's not about any of the original cast. I don't think it's appropriate. I wouldn't do it. I when somebody said something to me about the screaming, or I was like, oh hell yes, I was screaming. I did every single scream, grunt, groan, moan, sigh, everything. So whatever they blended together or deleted out, I can't imagine it. I mean, we're not the same person. We don't have the same voice. I think it's wrong. I don't think it's appropriate. I would never do that. I've never heard of that being done before. And I argued with somebody who said something about, like, it wasn't me screaming. I was like, oh, hell yes, it was me screaming. And then I started reading. It's like, what the hell? That's not an industry standard. That's not how this is done. It's not at all.
I think if you have any noise coming out of a character's mouth and you're dubbing it, it needs to be in the actor's voice. I mean, we even do that. We do that with crowd scenes and Walla, that you can't even, there's no discernible talking. It's just background noise. We'll still use English actors.
Yeah, I remember them talking about that. I want to say I did all of them.
I'll always record whatever, like if it's a line for me to record, I'll record it.
Different studios have different philosophies on that kind of thing. And the philosophy of Dubbing Brothers tends to be that if it's able to be kept from the original, then we keep the original, because a lot of that stuff is better than the original. It's hard to, a lot of it, oftentimes it's hard to make it sound as good as what the original actors did. So when we could, we would take what we could from the original audio. It was a catch as catch can sort of situation. We would do versions where the actors would fly with it. But we would have to decide, if it was as good. And if it wasn't, it was, we had to move on. So, a lot of those hard decisions had to be made.
I just very, very strongly disagree with that. I don't think that that's appropriate.
But yeah, if you're not, I mean, I think you always need to move. You need to use the actor for all those noises and grunts and whatever, because they're the actor that's doing the line. And you know what? You can sometimes tell a difference. I mean, if your actor has a little deeper register and then the scream is like, ah, you're going to notice if the character normally talks like this, so yeah, I think that's not a good thing.
When we were doing the edit and we were watching it back, it didn't bother us, so that was our barometer, but I can understand for a more trained ear in anime dubs, it probably was a little disconcerting.
The hardest part, I will say, is I think probably the consistency, as I kind of mentioned. That is something that we were tasked to do. That is something that we set out to do. There's different lines that have appeared in different versions, and we know that, fans might be expecting one thing, but we're also working with the studio who has this different thing set up. So I think one of the hardest parts was kind of navigating that consistency and making sure that, we were delivering a really good product. But again, in the end, it was a matter of making sure that the studio was getting the product that they wanted. But we were very aware of the differences in the translations throughout the year. So just having those kinds of conversations and just knowing there's so much.
It was such a difficult time and such a difficult process to a certain extent, that I was thinking more along the lines of a fandom, I wanted to be considerate to the people who had invested their time and energy into this franchise. Not to say that the directors hadn't done that, but in order for me to process all of this information and do a good job, I had to not split my focus in that way. I have a lot of respect for the other directors within the franchise. My approach was purely based on the Japanese performances. I would, the actors and I would sit and carefully listen to the original performances, and there was a twofold thing to that. One is that I feel we stayed very true to the original performances, but also, the actors at that point were huge fans and even friends with the original actors, and it was, it was servicing their interests to allow them to get as close as possible to what those original actors were doing, and thus we were able to sort of create a new thing. Even though a lot of them had done the rebuild movies, we were even able to go deeper in that direction, because that's not how the process went before. And I know there's been some, there always is with things like this, but there was some pushback from the community about those performances in that way. But I was really proud of what we accomplished, and I stand by the way that we did it.
Cara still had a lot of fingers in the pie when it came to the recording and some specific demands in the dialogue that I really didn't like.
I feel like with the translations that it was, I thought it was more specific, and I thought it was very, very rigid as to what we were required to do.
Oh, I cannot even begin to tell you how much it pissed me off. Oh my God. They were saying they wanted to give fans another take on Evangelion. Fans don't want another take on Evangelion. They want to hear "I mustn't run away," because it's in direct response to somebody saying you mustn't run away.
Well, okay, so I mustn't run away. Did they say don't run away, don't run away? Is it?
I mustn't run away. 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 Don't 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 run away.
Oh, crap. Because I told them, I said, no, I mustn't run away. I mustn't run away. I did it both ways. But they went with don't run away? Oh. Because I've signed I mustn't run away thousands of times on, my 8x10, my prints. Oh my gosh, really? Okay. So we recorded it. So I told them, I said, it's I mustn't run away. It's not, don't run away. So, but they went with don't. Okay, their prerogative.
I know there were instances where like, that didn't make any sense. That's not English.
Because there were times, like, even as an actor, line makes zero sense right here. Even if it was buried under 5,000 other things going on while everything was melting down, and they would go, that's what they want, and that was a huge thing when we did the end of Eva, is that the translations, Japanese and English, are not the same, and they wanted to really adhere closely to the Japanese. So there's some clunkiness in some of the dialogue.
I did hear stories about people going, "What are we saying here? What are we doing?" So yeah, that was something that went around, but luckily I didn't have any problems with mine.
And I do wonder how they came to the conclusion that this is the way it was supposed to be. But they were specific, and there were times I'd have to redub it because I was so used to saying things different ways. I have to redo a take because I was used to saying it differently.
I saw them go through the process where we were look at the script and go. They would go, okay, da-da-da. I go, that line doesn't make any sense. They go, we know.
Sele was making sure we said that the correct way, was very much a stickler of the director.
Sele's plans will soon come to fruition. Everything shall proceed according to Sele's scenario.
He wanted to make sure that it was done correctly, because otherwise it's like, well, why are they saying it differently now? That doesn't make sense.
There was so much technicality in the descriptions. I was like, Geoffria, this is like 84 syllables in 3 words. Like, I just remember being like, oh my gosh, because they are having to write them a certain way. You know what I mean?
I know a lot of the fans don't like it as much. There was something, I wouldn't say I don't like it, but something that was really challenging, though, was a lot of my lines were too long for the amount of mouth flaps we had and for the time that we had. So I felt it was challenging to compress, to speak so quickly and not sound like she was rushing, to make it just feel that Hikari naturally spoke fast sometimes, because sometimes I got to speak really slowly. So it wasn't that I didn't like a particular line, but sometimes it was just like, oh, I wish we were allowed to take a little bit more of this out, so that I could just have a little more time with it, a little more breathing room. Because it really, I watched the series again recently, and like my stuff clips. Some of it is just so, so fast. I can see the scene in my head. I can't remember the lines, but it's the scene. We've just said goodbye to a little kid. A little kid has just run through. It's like a hallway. There was a section in there that it was just a lot of words really fast.
Not at all. We're here to help each other.
Yeah, so the studio they were very involved. Kara, this has been a huge project with them since the very beginning, and they, it's their project, it's their scripts, it's their translations, and so they were definitely involved in wanting us to make sure that we were recording and bringing the best version of their project to life with our English dub. So they were definitely involved reviewing our work and just making sure that it aligned with the vision that they saw.
Dealing with a foreign studio that has such a strong hold on the property, it can, it's very challenging. It's that was the one thing that really stands out. Again, I don't fault them. I understand it's a beloved thing, but it was very difficult. There were certain things that, for instance, Spike and Amanda and Allison, knew to be true about the way that they would say, or phraseology, or catchphrase of this and that. They knew to be true, and they knew to be something that the fans would come to expect. And when we would go to them with that that concern, they would just come back and say, "Well, now we're changing it," and that was their answer. It's just like, now we have the opportunity to do it the way that we want to do it, and that's the way we're going to do it. And you have to respect that. I mean, there's really no argument there. Like I tried to, with Tiffany as well. Tiffany was a huge advocate of this, like, making sure that there was a consistency from previous writing and performances. And, I made it very clear to all of them, to Tiffany, to everybody, that I was on their side. I was their advocate, but there was only so far I could go. It doesn't belong to us. It's in the end of the day, it's their property, and we have to do it the way that they want to do it. So we did a lot of like pitching ideas. We would record it, a certain way, and then record it another way, and try to. And I think in movie 4, I actually had to notate every single thing that we did differently. I had sheets and sheets of paper, just like everything that we would try differently. So, it was an arduous process, and that was a huge challenge. And on top of that, there wasn't a very quick response to those issues. So a lot of times they resulted in pickups and that kind of thing.
So in fact, I would say a lot of times when I mention like for me, if I had to re-record something, it would just be because of a certain name, or something like that, or a certain thing they didn't like. It was because we would use what we thought made more sense, or what we thought sounded better, and then they would come back and say, "No, we don't like that. We want you to say this." But so even then, sometimes, even when we would record what they wanted, I think we would try an alternate way just in case. But yeah, it tended to be whatever, they wanted. And again, it's their films and they're the clients, so they get final say. But we would try to lean it one way or another. I think a lot of stuff from Mari was okay. I think the big one was Nerve Doggy was a big one.
That cool with you, Nerfly? Okay with you, Nerve Doggy.
It is what it is. I liked some of the other options, but it was okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm was in a very different position than Tiffany and Amanda and Spike, Alice, and they're all amazing. I love them so much. But the difference is that they have a history with Evangelion, like directly. They have been a part of Evangelion since the beginning, and so I feel like it would be, and for me, I was a fan, but this was my first time. I was brought in to then be this character.
As an actor, you can, if you have a concern, you can raise your concern, you can raise your voice and go, hey, I think this, but they, ultimately they have the final word. So you have to kind of just bow to what they want. Even though if you think it's wrong.
I think I can definitely understand where they're coming from when they would like something to be said a certain way or referred to a certain way, or it makes more sense because they've been playing these characters for a long time. So I feel for them. I think that's why it was probably a lot more difficult than for me, where it was just like, okay, I don't necessarily think that sounds better, but what do I know? I guess so. I guess I got it. You have to do what the client wants. Even though we would fight, we would. I just want to make that clear too. It's not like anything that fans would be like, ugh. I guarantee you we probably felt the same way, but we don't have the control over the script.
I hated all of them. And I honestly told them, like, look, this is what happened to us. You've got to stand up to them. You've got to say, no, we're doing this. And we're good at our jobs and we're doing this. And they didn't. And so they kept changing it and kept changing it and kept changing it. And I was like, told y'all.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, the actors, particularly Tiffany, took it very, very hard. And I understand, they take a very, very close ownership to their characters. And they've been doing, they've been representing these characters for years. And so, I see both sides of it. But at the end of the day, my hands are tied, I'm working for for the studio. So
what was it that she called Shinji coattails? Oh my god. That's not a noun. It's not a noun. Well, I mean coattails is a noun, but it's not a pejorative. It's not a nickname. That's not how it's not used in that way. Like you could say you rode in on someone's coattails, which is kind of the inference there. But that was awful. I hated that. I mean, I hated that. Yeah.
I'm almost there! Hang on, coattails!
I think you can get in that comment on the meeting about who's the one who came in on his daddy's coattails or whatever. That's fine. That's enough. You get the picture. This is her impression of him. You don't have to keep using some made up slang that doesn't exist. It just didn't work for me. I thought it was dumb.
What I was actually very surprised by is how tuned into the translations she was. I guess there were a lot of strange choices that didn't really make sense in English. Like they translate it in Japan and they do it more literally. And she's like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so she would be adamant about doing it. At least we might do it the original way, but then do it this way because this makes sense.
We were saying things that just don't make sense in English. No one talks that way. No one says four-eyed crony. No one's ever used the word crony that way in the history of the English language, except for me. That's it. No one has ever used it that way except for me. Just abstractly calling someone a crony. Oh, you crony, you. No one's ever said that. No one's ever called someone coattails. Hey, coattails. And I had to say it a bunch of times, and it was stupid. It was absolutely stupid. I hated it. I didn't want to do it. But, you know, if I refused to do it, ultimately I would have been fired. I mean, it would have been bad. So, you know, there are a lot of things that I have to say and I have to do that I don't like. But, you know, I'm ultimately not the person who gets to make that decision. I can comment and share my opinion and say why we should or shouldn't do this, but ultimately I don't get to make that choice.
Hey, Four Eyes, the spare! Four-eyed Crony, throw me a spare!
What our suggestion was, and I thought was pretty good, this was actually the sound engineer who came up with this, but Four-eyed Flunky. Like, oh, it's alliterative, and it kind of gets across the message that you want, and you might say Flunky sounded better than Crony, we thought,
But they would entertain all of those changes that she wanted to make, just because she's been doing this so long. I mean, she knows more about Evangelion than everybody that was involved on the project. I mean, all the Dubbing Brothers guys. I mean, she knew more about it than they did. Yeah.
I really hoped that we could redo that Four-eyed Crony thing that I hated so much. But they would not let us redo it. We did redo it. We did. We fixed all the things that we thought were great, and then no, they didn't like it. They made us go back and change it again. So
I know Tiffany for sure was like, what the, you know? And especially when it directly contradicted something that was accurate in the original series, you're like, all right, that's just what Carl wants right now.
Oh, there was a line in the original dub of 2.0 or 3.0, but one of my favorite lines ever, and it's a very frequent request for quotes, and it is simply the duty of the elite to protect the ignorant masses, which is a great line. And when we got to that part in the script, and I said, and it was worded differently and kind of in an awkward way, and I said, oh, Joe, I know this line. This is an iconic Oscar line here. And so we did that. It's simply the duty of the elite to protect the ignorant masses. But it got, and you may know what it got changed to. I don't remember, but it got changed. They made us go back and change it to whatever they had written in the script.
It's the duty of the elite to protect the ignorant masses. Helping the idiotic masses is the duty of the elite.
Yeah, it was very, very awkward. And I said, no, I got this. I know what this line is. It's iconic. Let me do this. And we did it, and it was great. But, you know, again, we had to change it back.
So now imagine that, and you're on a time crunch trying to get recordings done. You know, at a certain point, Cobb would just turn down turn off our microphones, and we would just kind of sit and listen to her, you know, go off out of complete respect. I mean, like, it's just like you're not getting a word in edgewise. So we would just kind of let her go. And it was very funny because you could hear her kind of walking away and talking, and she would walk away, talking, come back, and she'd still be talking, you know. It was very funny and very charming. I mean, she's amazing. And I can't help but respect her level of dedication to that role. I mean, it's incredible. And so I mean, hats off to her. And I feel bad that it didn't, you know, that we weren't able to accomplish those things, you know, in that way. But what she did and what is there is amazing, and it's new. It's a new version. It's a version for a new generation, and there's going to be a large group of fans that only know that, you know, that Asuka says those things in that way, and that Spike only says those things in that way. So
it was fun to see Tiffany joke around so much with the voice director because they both knew so much about the project. And because she's such a legend, they would entertain anything she wanted to do. So if she wanted to change the line or do it a little bit differently, they would always give it to her. And that's so nice to see because it's not always the case.
What are you, stupid? You're an idiot, aren't you?
I got one.
What are you, stupid?
I don't remember, but I was so excited that I got to say it and that it got left in. I was so excited. I mean, it's iconic, And not only that, I'm going to say this. I think it's canon. They used it in the manga. They did. They used it in the manga. And I love it. It's classic. I think it's canon. I didn't want any other version of that. So yes, I was very excited about that one of them got in there.
So one of the challenges of the way that this had to be done is that files were, I mean, there was nobody in the studio where we work. Normally there's administration, there's tech, there's editors, there's, mixers, like the whole building's full of people that are working on a project. During the pandemic, everybody was gone and they were working remotely through secured folders. And that was all new. It hadn't been established. This was all things that had to be established on the fly. And so things got lost, things got misplaced. People were on different pages about where files go and how files are delivered. And, we would do, hours worth of pickups that never made it into the movie. There's a close-up of Misato, where she says, launch, wonder, because for a while we were saying wonder instead of wunder, So that we had to pick that up, and it never made it in. So there's an inconsistency in the way that word is pronounced.
And launch, wonder! Now launch! Wonder!
And that happened all the time.
Oh, Joe, I loved working with Joe. I felt like I had a really good relationship working with him. We tried as best as we could to kind of make what I feel were improvements on the script and change a few things, fix some things.
It was great. And he would listen to my input, and I love that. He was like, hey, it's a collaborative effort. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. And it was really cool. I've kept in touch with him. I keep in touch with all my directors if I can. I'm easy to find. So, it was great. I'd love to work with him again.
Joe Fria was amazing. And he was really good at being like, okay, in this scene, you're back to zero again. So let's make it a little more robotic. Okay, in this scene, you've been around for a while. You're a little more human. Let's hear a little more emotion in your voice.
Oh, Joe was fantastic, man. I loved him. I'd love to work with him again. I should probably reach out to him and say, hey, buddy.
When I walked in the booth, he's like, it's an honor to meet you. I'm like, what? An honor?
It was just a lot of fun, and he didn't seem to get upset when I would make a mistake, and which I'm sure I did, but we were all just in it together, trying to put it together as best we could.
I actually ended up giving him. Somebody gave me programs from End of Evangelion and from Death and Rebirth. And I gave those to him as a way of like passing the torch. I think he did a great job. I like some of the performances he got out of us are amazing. I loved, oh my God, Tiffany rocked.
I loved Joe Fria. I love Joe Fria. He's a crazy, incredible, talented. I love how much research he did on the show.
Oh, Joe's great. He's one of my favorite directors in Los Angeles. I've worked with him on a few different projects. He's just very easygoing, smart guy. He really knows his stuff. And, I've known him for a few years. We used to work in the same theater company together years and years ago. So that's kind of where I met him. He's a good director and a really good voice actor too, but he's also great on stage and on camera too. So
Joe's great. I mean, funny story. When I met Joe, we got to know each other a little bit. I worked on a trailer for a movie he was trying to produce, a horror film. I'm a sound designer as well. So I did the sound on a trailer for him because he was working with another buddy of ours, Mike Fox, in there. And Mike was helping him put that together. And then I found out that both of us came from physical theater. So that was great.
He is an incredible director. He's also a wonderful actor. So he knows exactly what to say to get your performance even more specific. He's incredibly supportive, incredibly kind, and he laughed at all my bits. because when we're between moments of recording, I like to be a goofball and make the director laugh and make the engineer laugh.
I wanted to do Good by Joe, and I wanted to, I wanted Caro to have confidence in Joe, and because he was so kind in the beginning. And that's always a great environment. I don't know why more directors don't know that. If you respect the person you're directing immediately, or at least give them cursory respect, they may act up later and not deserve it. But Joe really offered respect, and he was kind in his methods. He was a good director. Like, he knew what he wanted out of a line.
Oh, Joe's a delight. I love working with Joe. That was the first time I have ever worked with him. And again, I didn't know who he was. I did know that he had worked on a few things at Dubbing Brothers. I knew that he was a very talented actor and director. But yeah, he didn't know me. I didn't know him. I was cast, and it was like, okay, then here you are. Here's the director and here's the actor. So he was such a delight, and he was so supportive and so just like encouraging of me being a fan.
It was good working with him, and I'd never really worked with anybody in LA before. So that was exciting for me. And again, I was just grateful that they reached out.
I would say he's a gentle director. He is not super prescriptive. Like, he lets you come to it. He's very clear though, but he lets you kind of come to it, and then he makes it better. So, and he's so efficient. I don't know if this is on purpose or if it's because we had such a compressed recording time, but we didn't do a lot of takes. A lot of times we would do one. I would often ask, well, can we do a second? So maybe we would do 2 takes, and then we would do a safety. And I think what's fantastic about that is it doesn't get stale. It doesn't have time to get stale. And even under the crazy circumstances that I was filming, like recording the first time when all the tech broke for so long, and the second time when I'm in my little home, blanket fort, both times Joe is so focused and calm and relaxed and like jovial, and clearly enjoys the material so much. He just loves it, and he knows it, and he gets it. And so if there's any problem, he has such great solutions.
Joe, actually, the reason why I'm a little more emphatic as far as my opinion with Joe and working with him as a director is because Joe, I've been working with since the early years of when I got into dubbing. So the first time I met Joe was on another, I think it was on Netflix. Yeah, it was another Netflix series called Undercover. And I play at that point, before he got a whole bunch of spin-off movies and a series as well. I played this very tough, kind of a gruff gangster kind of dude, but with a heart of gold, named Ferry Bowman. In that I think it was a Danish show, again called Undercover, and he was one of the first directors I had worked with in the dubbing in the dubbing market, essentially, right when I got into it. And he and the engineer at the time there at Dubbing Brothers, again, it was another Dubbing Brothers production. His name is Mike Fox. We just hit it off, man, and he was just awesome to work with. And Joe, he does great as far as allowing for collaboration and creativity on our end, right?
And he would listen to me. Like, he'd say, well, what's this? Or what did they do for this? And I'd be like, okay, it's this, blah, 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 blah. And like, okay, in the series, blah, 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 whatever. So, we had a really good relationship, I thought.
Joe is very good at what he does. And I'd love to work with him again sometime.
I'd work with him any day, anytime, any day. It was great.
I remember I had to do a countdown starting, I think, at 30 because it was a 30-second countdown. And right before we recorded it, I said to Joe, wait, am I going to do the entire countdown? And he said, yeah, we're going to need the entire countdown. And I said, so every single number from 30 to 1. And he said, yep, okay.
30 seconds. 28. 27. 26. 25.
It's actually not easy. It's a fun challenge.
I feel like I like heightened emotion and getting to do scenes like that. So I know I mentioned it before, but that moment on the ship, talking about Shinji and how he led to the near third impact, I feel like that was my favorite scene that I did.
Oh, you know what? I love the scenes where Rey interacts with Hikari, Kimberly Yates.
Why do you say goodnight?
Well, it's something we say hoping that we'll all sleep soundly that night.
And she's like, what's a cat? What's a baby? What's a, and Kimberly's so sweet and so kind and patient. Like that's not a weird question at all. Here's the answer. It was really sweet. I love those scenes.
I mean, I love all those lines where where Rey will say, why do you say good night, or why do you say good morning, or what, why? And it's so funny because I just love the way Hikari thinks. She gives her these kind of very philosophical answers, but they're true.
Why do you say good morning?
Well, it's something we say hoping we can live together for today.
It has two meanings. So first of all, it's just a lovely description of why we say good morning. I don't know if that's why we say, but I think there's a hopeful thing, like we hope that we'll have each other for another day, but then also there's that kind of very real thing of like, I hope we can stand each other for another day, like we can get along for another day. So that would probably be my favorite. My second favorite scene, which is going to sound kind of morbid, but it is the Rey suicide explosion moment. I love the dynamics. I love the kind of framing back when you see the two of them. I love how she backs up and her lines. That moment where she says, I can't remember the exact line, maybe you can help me, but it's something like, I wanted to harvest the rice.
I wanted to harvest the rice.
It's something like that where she says, I wanted to harvest the rice. And I just think that's such a beautiful moment.
I wanted to stay with the boy I liked. I wanted to do this, do that. And then she explodes. That one was really amazing, I thought.
I loved playing the comedic bits for him. And I think it's the prequel, or in the first 3 movies, there's a scene where they go eating together, like the kids do. And the penguins with them.
Hey, I called dibs on that. Do you know the phrase, eat like a bird, go away?
It ends up Toji's chasing the bird around and being silly, getting to be silly. Of course, anytime I get to be silly in a character, I love that.
Anything conversational was always easy, but most of my time with her voice was spent yelling or panicked or really frustrated. So it often was urgent, the information I was delivering, right? Because it was life or death. So anything where she just, I think I had a scene where she's in a plane looking out a window and says like, we'll be there soon or something.
It's creepy how much it reminds you of the second impact, don't you think?
And I thought like, that's the easiest thing I've ever had to say ever.
I do know that I had for 3 the line where she talks about insurance. Shinji is their insurance.
Our puppy must be Zella's insurance!
I had a hard time with that because being from Texas and where I'm from, we would say insurance, not insurance. And so I kept saying insurance instead of insurance. And I remember we said that one a lot. That's mostly what I can remember. Is that might be one of the last lines because I had to say it a few times.
Like I kept saying Evangelion wrong, a lot on the second one.
Evangelion Unit 5 was recently destroyed.
They were very patient and very nice.
The locker kissing room or kissing prank, right, with Shinji.
Just kidding.
And I can't recall what I would say, but what I had said at the time. But we're always, especially because I already have a prior friendship with Joe at the time, so we just go back and forth in the booth without trying to waste too much time, of course. But we'll be like, we'll add a line or something like. I think if I don't remember, I don't remember if I said this or not. But after Shinji screams, I think I said something of like, and I'm sure they recorded it, but whether they kept it somewhere, I don't know if it's there. I think I said something of like, was it good for you too? But something like that. We'll play around with things like that.
Happiness never comes that easily. That's why you got always to walk the right way.
I do know that I had a lot of fun with the songs. Singing was fun, and I think like we did do some fun things with the music. Joe is great because Joe's familiar with music, and Joe actually recorded. So I think it was for the second movie. Joe would actually record the song for me, just like not professionally, just record it so I could kind of hear what it would probably sound like once I went in to record. And it was fun. I mean, I still sing tambourine, 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 like all the time. I just randomly start singing it.
I have a musical theater background, and it fell on me to make sure that the music worked, with the words that were written. So, I did a lot of working on sort of getting the translation to fit the song, and so yeah, I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was definitely a cool experience. I've never done anything like it to that level.
I sang in this one.
Get over it. Don't talk about lying.
It was this little song that was happening in the background, and they didn't give me. They gave me the lyrics, but they didn't give me sheet music. And I mean, I was a opera major in college, so I can read music and sing. Of course, I'm a little, toe up right now, but he's like, well, I'm not going to sing you. I'm going to sing the thing, and then you work on it, and come back, and we'll work on it. So he sends me a line. There's no beat. It's just him singing. And so what I ended up doing is, since I have a digital audio workstation, I put it in, divided up, started figuring out what the chords were for the song, and wrote a little song. I orchestrated his bit, and he absolutely hated it because he was like, I don't even sound good. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It actually helped me create, know where the beats are and what we're going to be pushing, because it was such a weird song. And I think like 3 seconds of the song is actually in the movie.
He went for it. Yeah, he was really intimidated by it, but he went for it, and it was really good. It's sad that we couldn't use more of it.
Let's go.
Being able to watch the ending for the very, very first time is a very special memory that I'll always have.
I was so happy. Seriously, I was so happy. I did that, and the last scene is just me talking. It's just me, and it's just my regular voice, and so it's like I'm Shinji grown up. Like, here I am, baby.
For the ending, I basically think that the world has now reset into the way that it needed to be, if that makes sense. Like, this is now the true reality of it. It's safe. And to me, it's some people with the whole Mari and Shinji thing, and stuff like that. Again, I'm not going to be like I'm an expert and I know if it's romantic or not, but they're definitely two people that I think needed each other, and he needed somebody like Mari in his life. And it's kind of like now they have each other and they're running off into our world our world is the way it's meant to be, and he's happy.
I would say, it's a possible future for them. This is a possible future that it's a way out for them. It's an exit. This is a way that maybe they have a chance of happiness. Maybe they can move on to having a normal life.
My interpretation is everybody gets put in their own perfect world. And in Shinji's perfect world, there's no Evangelion.
Honestly, my first interpretation, I thought everybody died again. It took someone had to explain it to me to say, no, they're not dead. It's not a dream. This is actually a happy ending. I was like, oh, okay. Because Evangelion's so cerebral. I was like, oh, okay. Well, they all just merged into one consciousness again. Okay, no, this is actually a happy ending.
I finally feel like it's somewhat complete in Anno's mind, but once again, we never know because we don't know how Anno thinks.
My reaction was, man, I can't believe this is it.
Well, it's kind of going into the sunset vibe,
I think it's true to kind of this open-ended quality, but it's also pretty hopeful in the end. And I think that's really brave. I think that's a brave choice to make it hopeful.
I was crying. It was really difficult to keep a lot of that in and, portray Mari how she is in those scenes. She's grown up Mari, without having that emotion come through, because you don't want to get the emotion wrong. It's not a sad scene. So, and not that I was sad, it was more like a nostalgic, I was feeling it. I mean, I really was. I was going through it once the music starts playing and everything.
They're adults, I mean, Asuka finally gets to grow up. The curse of Ava is that she was trapped in this 14-year-old body forever. And, I kind of thought about that for Asuka, that she's trapped in this 14-year-old body, and she finally gets to grow up. She finally gets to be an adult. So I was happy for that. I really kind of liked the ending that, seems like a more normal world, more hopeful tone that, we're not engaged in these horrific battles all the time.
He's revealing who he, this is kind of what it was all for. And this is, even if it's to my demise, it doesn't matter. It is very, very touching to me. And I was very blown away because I wasn't expecting that at all. Because to me, it sort of revealed what little bit of humanity he actually had. And I think that was important to show.
I remember just crying. I came out of the booth because that was, of course, the last thing we recorded for 4. I came out of the booth and I was just tears. I needed a good bit of time to just and again, not sad tears, just whew.
That's something. I'll be honest. I went back and I watched it, but I can't. Again, Ava is such a complex anime that has a lot of different interpretations and a lot of way of viewing things that I don't fully remember the ending. And what I do remember is I remember sitting there, I'm like, I don't know if I fully understand.
I just let my colleagues wax poetic on their interpretation of the end of Evangelion. Whatever version, whatever ending, they want to analyze. Art is art. I don't need to analyze it. Nobody needs my 2 cents on how the series ended, how the films ended, how the reboots ended. It's not essential to have the Amy Seeley hot take on how something ended.
I don't know. I was honestly I didn't know how to feel about the ending. I know some people said it felt complete, the way it, but it's felt still open for me. I feel like there's still work that can be done. There's still story we haven't seen yet.
Is it silly of me to just want to believe that it's as straightforward as that? It is that they are now adults and they are able to be happy because boy, when I tell you that, like, these kids, again, they are kids. These kids are being put in some very difficult decisions and being tasked with essentially saving the world. And now here they are as adults, just being able to live as adults. Like, I don't know. Is it silly for me just to want to think that it's as straightforward as that?
I mean, I don't remember if I even understood it to begin with, but yeah, I mean, I think Shinji transcends. That's what I'll stick with that. Shinji transcends.
It made me so damn happy. I was like, finally, he gets some happiness. All right.
After we finished recording, Joe turning to me with a big smile and saying, "Welcome to the Evangelion universe." And that still blows my mind to this moment, because, you know, now for the rest of my life, no matter what, I get to say I'm part of the Evangelion universe, and I just couldn't be giddier about it.
We did 2.0, and then we did 3.0, and then we had to go back in a couple times and do pickups. So that's where, you know, you missed a line, or there was a problem with it, or, you know, they wanted us to redo it. They wanted us to change the dialogue. They wanted us to change the line. And I thought after I had recorded 3.0, I thought, well, this might be the last time I ever record anything as Asuka, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. And the last line that Asuka has in 3.0, she's dragging Shinji away, and she says, "Come on." And I thought, well, that's probably my last line. But I had to go back in to record a line that we had missed on 2.0, and it was when the kids all go to the aquarium, and there was a line that was kind of during the lunch scene or something that we had forgotten to record. So actually, the last thing that I said as Asuka was, "Bunch of idiots. Bunch of idiots." And I thought to myself afterwards, like, you know, if that's the last thing I ever say as Asuka, that's really just spot on. That's perfect.
We didn't have a really big celebration. Like, we didn't have like a traditional celebration for a movie like this. And I remember talking to our director, and we was just like, let's try and do something. And so what we did was, there was a theater in LA that we were able to go to that would play the movie for us. So this was already, the movie had been out, and we invited as many of the talent as possible. But it essentially came together because we wanted to celebrate this really big and cool project that we had worked on, and especially for some of the talent that have been there from the beginning, definitely wanted to, you know, be there and experience it with like their friends who they've been working on this for so long. And yeah, it just kind of came together by like, hey, this is exciting, we should celebrate it. And especially because, you know, where it's not being celebrated maybe the same way a movie with theatrical release would be celebrated. So let's make our own little celebration out of it.
That was my idea. Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with each and every one of the actors, and they hadn't been together in a long time. You know, they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Some of them had never met before, and I just wanted them all in the same place. You know, enjoying the movie together.
We went to see it that weekend that it came out on. So it came on Amazon Prime August 13th, and we did the private screening. I think it was on August 14th.
It was so awesome to just see everyone, and old and new. And it made me wish it wasn't COVID, because it really deserved a bigger screening.
I was in a small theater in Hollywood, very intimate, pretty awesome. I mean, we just kind of, It wasn't a big flashy premiere. It was literally a friends and family type of thing. So there was probably 20, 30 of us, in that room. A lot of the actors I'd met for the first time that day.
I remember I had mixed feelings because I was very sad. I had yet to record a film or anything like that had made it to the theaters. And I really wanted to see on the big screen with like fans and friends and stuff like that. And I was very sad when I realized that it wasn't going to be released in theaters, because of COVID at the time. But then I felt really good when we had the private screening, because we did get to see it, on a big screen, and the way that I think it was really meant to be viewed. Watching it in a theater on the big screen, it does not it's so different than watching it at home.
I mean, of course, a lot of the people live in LA, so it wasn't that hard for them, but I actually flew there. I went there and saw it, and Brett Weaver did. I think we were the only two out-of-town people.
And what was great was all of us actors that were watching it, you could tell which parts we hadn't seen before or we weren't in, because you'd see people, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, now I see how that works.
And it was fun because I remember Tiffany, I don't think Tiffany knew that Ray exploded in the end. And so I was sitting next to her, and then Ray does, goodbye, and blows up to it. Oh! I was like, yeah, I guess I should have warned you. Sorry, sweetie.
I remember I was sitting next to one of the new cast members, and I'm so embarrassed to say I don't remember her name, but she played I think she played Ritsuko, and she looked at me, and I said, "Don't worry, I don't understand what's going on either." So. Yeah, I mean, there's just some of the stuff in there that I was like, what is even happening?
When Tiffany came to the screening that we did, she had full-on Asuka gear. It was like earrings and the shirt, and her shoes matched the shirt, and it was just so well done. It was so cool.
It was so fun, and that's when I finally got to meet, I got to meet Tiffany, and I got to meet Amanda, and they were both just delightful, but Amanda gave me one of the best experiences and moments of my life, because after the movie had ended, we all congregated outside, and she screamed my name and came over and gave me a huge hug, just raving about how she loved Mari. And to get that from, again, somebody that you have looked up to and you love their performance, I felt so welcomed by her and welcomed by Tiffany.
It was amazing. I don't know if I've ever smiled so hard and so much in my life.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a little thing, and then we all went out for Mexican food.
We did a little party afterwards, and we all met. So I met some of the other actors out at the bar afterwards, and we had a little celebration thing. It was great.
Actually, the best thing about that screening, besides seeing Amanda and Tiffany and everybody again, was we were out front taking pictures, and for most of us, this was our first premiere thing to go to, and this vivacious redhead walks up to me, and she says, "I don't know if you remember me." And I was like, "No." And she said, "Well, I was at MechaCon in Lafayette, Louisiana years ago when you went." I was like, "Yeah, that was a while ago." And she said, "Yeah, and I came up to the table and asked you how to become a voice actor because I never believed that anybody from Lafayette could get out of the town and go and be a recording person." And I was like, "Wow." And I said, "What did I say? Honestly, I don't remember. I remember going to MechaCon, but I don't remember." She goes, "Well, you were very nice to me. And, I was a teenager, and you talked to me and gave me a lot of good advice." And I was like, "Well, great. How did that work out?" And she goes, "Well, I'm in the show." And I can't remember her first name right now, but her last name is Jean-Gel.
Second Lieutenant Sakura Suzahara. Nice to meet you, sir.
But yeah, and that's one of the moments in my life, I only have a few of them, where I'm like, oh, I really affected someone And what's great is, what's even funnier about it is, I didn't even, my brain go, well, how did my brain do? Because I don't remember any of this. It's like, you were great. Oh, thank you, brain, for being great all those years ago. So it was a really touching moment for me.
Meeting Amanda was incredibly pivotal for me. I remember I went up to her and said, "You're Ray, right? Are you Ray? Are you?" And I said, "Are you the Ray that I watched when I was a child and watched Evangelion? Are you my Ray?" And she looked at me, I'm tearing up. Oh my God. and she said, "I'm your Ray." "I'm your Ray," is what she said. And I lost my shit because that was so cool.
It was just a fun day. Yeah, it's always fun to go to a premiere to see your work on screen.
I was invited, but I forgot what had happened. I think I couldn't make it that time because there was another project I was part of. So because I was recording for something else, which it happens, right? I couldn't make it, I think. But I was pretty bummed. I really wanted to see it. But I know it was pretty fun from what I heard. And I regret not being able to go, but it's in the past.
I was supposed to go, and Tiffany was so sweet. She called me, and I don't remember why I couldn't go. And I'd even had a ticket on hold to go. Oh, I was so upset I couldn't go. But yeah, I was almost there, but I wasn't.
I was set to go to the premiere, and I think it was 2 or 3 days before I got exposed to COVID. And so I had to go into quarantine. And I was going to have to fly to LA for it. I mean, obviously I couldn't fly, or I couldn't go anywhere. At that point, I think we were still quarantining for 2 weeks. So that was super disappointing. I was on the phone with Amanda kind of during the premiere, like right before and right after. And then when I was out of quarantine, then I did take a trip to LA, and Amanda and I hadn't watched it yet. I was like, no one tell me. And so I watched it for the first time in Amanda Winley's living room. And so when I finally got to sit down in her living room and watch it, and we were just in awe, because I still hadn't seen it, because we'd only gone cue to cue. So I'd only seen my scenes and my little parts. And so it was just like amazing.
It was really cool to log into Amazon Prime and see the ad there for Evangelion. That was pretty awesome. I was excited about that.
I remember the day that it came out too. I think I was talking to Tiffany that day.
As soon as they dropped on Amazon Prime, you bet that I was there watching it, and I grabbed my parents and I was like, watch this with me. My parents, who don't really know what anime is, but I was like, watch this with me, it's a big deal. And I remember too, it was so funny, kind of the countdown leading up to the release of that movie, because it was releasing on Amazon, but it was being released in different time zones. So while it was like 4 p.m. in the afternoon for us and we had to wait until the next day, it was already on Amazon Prime in Australia. And so Spike was able to watch it and everything. And so that was funny because it was like, oh, great. It was like, oh, some other people in different time zones got to watch it earlier, or got to make the announcement that, this great project is out. But then some of us had to wait until it was officially released.
It was very tempting because fans got to see, they released it on Prime before I actually watched it. It took so much discipline. I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I wanted to, because, I was so sad for missing the premiere, and I didn't want to just watch it with non-cast members or with my family. I wanted to, we actually had our own version of premiere, kind of dressed up a little bit and had movie snacks and did the whole thing.
When it came out on Amazon and I started talking about it on social media, when I was allowed to finally, right? My fiance and I watched it. She had never seen Evangelion prior. And again, I hadn't seen any Evangelion since, again, my childhood. And my fiance, she was just like, what? What just happened? So it's like, again, and to be fair, I was almost in the same boat, but it's been a while. It had been a while since I had watched Evangelion. So,
and yeah, I powered through all 4 like in one day. I watched all of it in one day and was like, man, there's a lot going on here. It's so good.
Made a big bowl of popcorn and watched them.
I've seen some of them, but I haven't seen all of it. No,
I haven't seen the earlier ones. I should, because I like the story so much. I need to go back and watch. Maybe I'll do a screening for myself.
It has been on my list for so long. I'm such a nostalgia fan that the originals have always been like so etched onto me that I keep saying, okay, I'm going to watch the rebuilds, but I'm like, I don't know. It just gives me something to look forward to.
I don't know if I watched the last one, to be honest. I think I watched the first one or second. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know if I'm terrible. Oh my gosh. Maybe I didn't watch I don't think I watched Thrice Upon a Time. Oh no.
I love it, and I can't believe that there are people who don't. I mean, I know there's a lot of people. I love the soundtrack. I love the voice actors, the ones from the original, and then the newbies that are scattered in.
It was good enough where I would say, hey, let me watch this whole series, and I probably will at some point. I think it's a really great job all around from everybody. So I liked it.
I think they're beautiful. I think they're epic. I happen to be a fan of over the top cinematic violence, and they're all of that and more.
I love them. I know some people don't, and that's okay. I think that they're great. I love that we got these introductions of new characters and got to see maybe a different telling of Evangelion and a different telling of Shinji's story.
I think that it was a very ambitious thing to do, considering that, I mean, one was now it's in a different frame rate format. So, of course, it makes sense that if they're going to redo it for format, I think there's a point where Anno probably just said, we could just like really do this, like seriously do this and go for it. And there was somebody that said, here's the money, go do it. And so he was finally able to realize the thing without the depression that he had previously, that now he was able to do this thing with clearer eyes.
I would still prefer the TV series, to be honest with you. It feels kind of compressed and confusing. A lot of it, I still have no idea what a lot of that meant in the rebuild movies. I really, a lot of it, I just don't understand what on earth was happening. And so as thought-provoking and novel the original series was, and some people didn't like it for that. Some people got really, really mad. Well, this didn't end the way we thought it would, and why are you leaving these open-ended questions? Well, it was certainly, to me anyway, a lot more straightforward than the rebuild movies.
That did change quite a bit. Now, me as a person who's lived it so long, it was a treat for me. Hey, this is a new story I'm getting to feel, But I could see why that would be really disconcerting, because it really changed a lot, It's like, then that brings up the question: what did Anno really want to do? Were the rebuilds what he always wanted to do all along, or was this what Anno 30 years later wanted to do? Who knows?
I just remember really being grateful for having the work, and I remember really being grateful for being included in that community, and I'll never forget my cast.
It was such an honor, and I could remember just so many times in the booth, whether I was here or when I was recording for 3, just thinking about how I actually had said this several times to people that I knew and stuff, like me as an actor who works in anime and stuff, I never thought that I would be in the world of Evangelion. And that's just because I thought it was already done. Like when the fourth movie came out, like, you know, I didn't even give it any thought, you know, that would ever be a possibility for me. In fact, there's other animes and stuff like that I'm like, oh, that's what I would, if I could be in anything, that's probably what I would be in. So it was definitely not something I ever expected. And that, again, that emotion hit me so many times.
Watching playback and listening to my own performance initially in the recording session and listening to play, because that's what we do, right? You preview it, you make some choices as an actor, you hope that the choices work and that they match what's on screen, and you do it and you record it, and then you have to listen back because we have to review it just in case we have to pick something else up, right? But just listening to my Kaji back was like a big nerd squeal moment, if I may. I was pretty happy and pretty like proud of it. Still nervous like hell, man, but it was a really cool experience and memory. And it's as far as like my own career so far has been involved, like that one is pretty memorable to me.
I remember the animation being really great, and I remember telling Joe that too. It was really fun to watch because it was so well done and engaging. And in that respect, it's always awesome to see great animation.
Thinking that no matter what happens in the future of Evangelion, no matter what happens with dubs or anything like that, that I will always have a part in Evangelion, that I will always be a part of that world, and that just, it's so special. It's so special. And I feel extremely honored, and just, yeah, it really does mean a lot to me. And I just cannot even convey to people how much it means to me. And being Mari and getting to perform as her and be her and be part of that world, it's so special.
Again, honored to be asked. It was a lot of fun.
I mean, it was just a wild ride from the moment I got the first call to all of the, the tech breaking and the having to record under a, pillow fort.
We all had such a good time. It was hard and it was challenging, but we really loved it. And we created our own world within a world. And that's what I'll always kind of take with me.
I'm really proud that it went where it went. And who knows what's going to happen next.
We've almost reached the end, but there's one last EVA release to talk about. The Evangelion Anima light novels. These 5 novels will be released in America by Seven Seas from August 22nd, 2019 to June 24th, 2021. They would also later release an audiobook version of the novels narrated by Tiffany Grant from December 14th, 2023 to June 13th, 2024.
I had previously been working for IDW Publishing, where I had assisted on series like Ninja Turtles and Star Wars and X-Files and things like that. But I left IDW to sort of become a freelance editor for a while, see if I could make a name for myself. And it was during that time that I went to ReaderCon, which is this small sort of writers convention on the East Coast. And during basically a coffee clutch session with the editor Ellen Datlow, I met Nivedita Sen, who at the time was an editor of light novels at Seven Seas. And we got chatting. She gave me her info, and basically she started sending me light novels to sort of adapt or to proofread. She started sending me assignments. And for a couple months, we developed kind of this good working relationship where I was freelancing for them. And she must have liked my work because at some point she said, hey, we got the license for the Anima novels. Do you want to work on those? What's your familiarity with the series? And so, I tried to be honest and was like, I haven't actually checked it out yet, but I was super eager. I mean, I know what a big deal they were, and I know how beloved they are, so I really just wanted to be a part of it. And so basically, when I was approached to do the novels, I marathoned the show. I mean, I instantly fell in love with it, with the world, the characters, all of that. But no, I knew going into it, like, I really need to do my research and kind of get up to speed if I'm going to do these justice. And so I was still a freelancer when I was working on the first 2 novels. Seven Seas did eventually hire me as a full-time editor, and then of manga, actually. So most of the work I did at Seven Seas was on manga, but during that time I still worked with Nibs on the final 3 Anima novels. The ultimate goal, or at least the ethos at Seven Seas, is to take the translated text, which often can be, this is no knock on translators, just Japanese and English are very different languages structurally. So if you're doing a straight translation, it can sometimes read a little stilted, or it can feel like translatees. So the idea behind adapting the text is to make sure it's engaging. It doesn't come across, just like that it flows well, essentially. That it is localized to an extent, so that people are going to, North American English-speaking readers are going to understand what's going on. At the end of the day, it's, we want to be accurate like a sub, but colloquial like a dub, I guess would be the best way to say it. I think with all of our series, it's very important to us to be consistent with anything pre-existing. Evangelion was no exception. So we had an internal style guide. There were a lot of conversations between me, Nibs, the editor, and the various translators, just to make sure that we were as consistent as possible. And I think really, again, doing justice to the work that came before. So I'll be honest, during my time at Seven Seas, I usually didn't interact with licensors directly. I don't recall a scenario where we wanted to do things a certain way and then they came in after the fact. I believe they were kind of hands-off, but don't quote me on that. I would say each one was probably somewhere between 40 and 80 hours. The translators were very good. So thankfully I didn't need to get too bogged down in like sort of refining the prose or anything like that. But there's a lot of cross-referencing. And even though, of course, the translators are already putting in the heavy lifting to do the research and make sure they understand exactly what's going on, I feel like the Anima novels in particular, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of complexity. And sometimes, I'd have to reread a scene multiple times to make sure I fully understood exactly what was happening and therefore could, adjust as needed to make sure that it was going to be clear to the average reader. I mean, I just remember having a blast and feeling so lucky that I got to be part of, such an iconic and, again, beloved, not to keep using that word, but beloved series. So to be a small part of it was just really exciting. I loved every minute of it.
So we work with Seven Seas, who puts out a lot of Japanese light novels. And one of the things that happened last year was I got an email from Adam, who's the CEO at Seven Seas, saying, hey, we've managed to get a hold of the licenses for Anima, and we would love to produce an audiobook series. So obviously knowing that this is such a huge franchise, we sat down and we discussed what we wanted. And so there were a few names that were put forward, and we felt that Tiffany would be the best sort of person to narrate the series.
Another crazy story involving getting an email from my talent agent, and the email said something like, do you want to do, or are you interested in recording an audiobook for something called Evangelion? And like, clearly, I mean, when I say my agent, there's a talent agency. There's several agents who work there. And anyway, I called her up, and I mean, it was clear she didn't have any idea. She didn't know what Evangelion was. She did not know what they were talking about. And I said, and I explained it to her, and I said, yes. And so there was a few emails back and forth. The the publisher of the Anima books, Seven Seas Siren, that was their idea. They wanted to get me specifically to narrate the books. There are 5 light novels. And even though they're called light novels, these are pretty long books, to be honest with you.
And so she auditioned. We were able to get her, and it was fantastic. So
They wanted to know, did I have experience doing audiobooks? And I said, well, the only ones that I'd done 2 audiobooks, but they were, one of them was Peter Pan, and one of them was Pinocchio. And it was really just voice acting. I wasn't narrating the book. I was literally doing characters, very much the same as, anime, video games, that kind of stuff. So that was mostly my experience. I've done some narration before, but I had never done anything as long form as doing an audiobook. So they had me read 2 pages and send that to them, and I did that. And then they have the production company, John Marshall Media. They're based in New York, but they have a studio that is here in Atlanta. And so we actually recorded at a studio in Atlanta that primarily does audiobooks. They primarily do audiobooks there.
there's a lot of pre-production prep that happens before an audiobook is made, and the role of the director is to understand the whole story arc, to understand what's going on, so that we can then shape the direction of the scene. Essentially, it's like a movie, right? Except that you don't have visuals. You are literally creating everything in the audio realm.
And I tell you what, I realized after we had gotten into it that, so I would read the books ahead of time. I would read the first book before we went to the first book, second book, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, wow, it is good that it was me doing this, because I was actively catching mistakes, grammatical errors and some spelling errors and stuff that were in the books, but then also some continuity errors that I caught. There was one time in the 5th book where there was a line that was attributed to Ritsuko, and I knew that it wasn't Ritsuko saying it. It was Ibuki. So this was Maya talking. It was not Ritsuko. I mean, Ritsuko is really not in this story, so that was bizarre. I thought, some of the continuity errors and things in there, I just felt like no one would have caught these things but me. And they really actually relied on me a lot for finding these kinds of mistakes and bringing it to their attention. And they seemed to be really happy that I could catch these things and point them out. And they said, like, well, Tiffany is the subject matter expert when it comes to Evangelion, so we need to listen to her. And that was pretty great. And, I had the experience of, like, being very familiar with the characters, and, there's a lot of terminology, a lot of in there, like Lance of Longinus, or just different terms, different people's names, and knowing what those things mean in relationship to this universe, even though it is like an alternate ending and it goes forward into a future that we haven't seen before. But still, it's helpful I felt it was helpful to know who the characters are, what their relationship is to each other, and so forth.
Because, again, just her involvement with the series for, so many years, I'm not going to try and impose and think that I know better than her, who's been in that universe for so long. And it's been it was very collaborative. When it comes to knowledge of the universe, I defer to her. And when it comes to, certain artistic choices or decisions, then we would have a conversation about it and go with what was best. So in this sense, we really had a great resource with Tiffany, which you don't normally get a lot of times. So that was super helpful. this was one of the smoothest ones, just because she knew the universe, she knew the world of what was happening, and so being able to lean in on that solves a lot of issues that in your typical audiobooks you would have questions about, like how would this person react in the scene, like what's going on here, and how to play certain roles. So with that, again, we were very fortunate to have her knowledge, and I guess it would be just when she first started narrating, just getting her into sort of that realm of audiobook narration and making sure she didn't blow out her voice.
And really quite a stickler when it comes to spelling and grammar and stuff like that. So there were things that I just personally caught and noticed, and things that I found. And I mean, they all had to be run by the publisher. Everything that I found, all of the notes, those had to be when I was suggesting a change. I wasn't just independently allowed to make a change, but everything got run by them.
I mean, you want to talk about consummate professional and just all around, amazing person. I mean, she's it. So her level of preparation and knowledge and everything was fantastic. It was so easy to work with her.
I liked doing it. So hopefully I'm going to be doing some more audiobooks in the near future.
As an actor, not everybody can get into the world of audiobooks because you're sitting there recording for 8 hours. It's long, it's uncomfortable, and you're working a muscle that most people don't talk for 8 hours straight a day. She did fantastic. She understands the art of acting and how to tell a story, and that was really, really fun.
And we recorded all 5 of the books. It took about 2 months, about 3 months. I mean, we weren't doing it every day, but it was like record, and then we would go back and do pickups and then record the next book and so on until we got it all done.
The studio where we were working on for the first few series, one of the mics decided to die a slow death. And we realized that when we went in for pickups, and it sounded completely different. So, which, I mean, that almost never happens. So it was a very strange phenomenon. We had to change rooms. We wasted hours trying to get fixed. Finally figured out it was the mic that was slowly going bad.
It was I enjoyed it. I had a good time doing it. I had not done anything really like that before, but I found it to be enjoyable.
I would just say it was fun hearing her tell the story. I mean, I think when something goes well, it's hard to almost lose yourself in the story, and you kind of have to force yourself to pull yourself out of it and not get too immersed, because you got a job to do. You got to actually listen and look at it from more of an objective point of view and a directorial standpoint. But it was hard because she's such a wonderful storyteller. So you kind of get sucked in, and then you're like, oh, wait, she screwed up this word here. I didn't even, notice. So having an engineer also have ears on the project was good to be able to pick up on things like that.
So I've effectively been Asuka now for, over 27 years. It's crazy.
And that's it. That's the full history of bringing Evangelion to America. Or at least as full of a history as we're going to get for the time being. There's really nothing left to say except congratulations.
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 Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
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 Congratulations! Congratulations! What? What?
Spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true.
But wait, we're not quite finished yet. We may have covered the history of bringing Evangelion to America, but there's still more about the franchise to talk about. Join the voice cast and everyone else once more as they discuss the legacy, impact, and future of Evangelion. It's the Legacy of Evangelion in America, coming soon.